Okay, it is 7 o'clock, and I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Kaneland District 302 Board of Education. And we would like to inform everyone tonight that's in attendance that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. And there's more information available on our district website. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Here.
Mr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. LePayton.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mr. Rivas.
Present.
Mrs. Sparber.
Here. With 7 members present, we do have a quorum tonight. Are there any board members that would like to move items from the consent agenda to new business? Anyone? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. We're looking for approval of the agenda tonight. A motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call when you're ready, please.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. LePayton.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. We move now to our next item, which is the board and superintendent salutes, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Lee.
Thank you. This is our first time, as you know, video streaming, so we're one mic short. So we'll figure it out for next time and make sure we have enough mics. And I need one other. As you might know or may have known, that in what we traditionally do in the spring, we recognize our retirees. But tonight we'd like to take a special note because our retiree that we're about to recognize is going to be retiring in about 3 weeks, and about 2 days after that is going to be moving to Tennessee. So we may not get to see Ginny Thomas much after the next couple weeks. So Ginny, would you please come up? A couple of things I'd like to share about Ginny. Once she found out we were video streaming this, she was like, how exactly does this work so my husband in Tennessee can watch? So, do you want to say hi to your husband? A couple of things about Ginny. It's going to be very sad to lose Ginny. Ginny's been in our district for over 24 years, last 23 years contiguously. And here's what Ginny's done. Talk about a great career. She was a bus driver, elementary school library assistant. She worked in curriculum with Dr. Mumm, and then was also current role is an administrative assistant to Fran Eggleston in special education. So talk about somebody who is a great breadth of experience. Normally, we would ask somebody like Ginny to come back and sub in a number of those roles, but because she's moving, we won't be able to. So if you would, please join me in congratulating again, Ginny. Thank you. Thank you. A second salute, it's kind of a general salute. If last week, students, you weren't at school, so you probably would like to salute that regularly. But what I would like to salute is our staff. We had some professional development last Monday and Tuesday that in my 25 years of experience is by far the best professional development experience I've seen. Board members, I emailed this to you, and also you have a copy of it. We just got back from the III conference in Chicago, which has about 5,000 attendees. This brochure that Nikki Larson helped create with her students at the Fox Valley Career Center has nothing on the III conference. So it was a great experience. We had Mike and Sarah. Mike and Sarah, would you please stand, who put a lot of this together, time and effort, directors of Ed Services. A couple of things that's neat to note over those 2 days. One of the things that we're learning and we're experiencing is how to grow our own depth and our own talent. So it was neat to experience the fact that we had over 30 of our own staff members present. So if you're a staff member who is here presenting, could you either stand or wave? thank you very much for helping. Thank you. In addition to our internal staff and our internal planning that we also had over 15 different districts ask if they could come once we had our information out. So we had over 15 districts represented, and with our support staff, our certified staff, and outside people that came from other districts, we had over 500 people here, staff and teachers, for the professional development. So as I shared again, that was the best professional development I've had in 25 years, a bunch of positive comments. And for those of you that are on social media, I regularly follow a number of our buildings, a number of our staff members on Twitter, and usually there's 8 to 10 a day. I'll retweet them. Some of you follow me, I know that. But on that day, my whole page was just booked with Kaneland people retweeting and tweeting and following each other. So it was just a great day. Hopefully we can take a lot of that energy, keep it, rebottle it, and continue into the second semester. So again, thanks for everybody who participated in that day. The next thing is we transition as our salutes. We generally don't have this big of a crowd, so obviously we have a number of staff members and students we'd like to recognize. I'll start with having Jill come up. Jill Maris, the principal at the high school. She will start, and I know some of her staff will help her, recognize some of our students. And here's just the one that I know couldn't be here.
Thank you.
And then when Jill is done, Mr. Faulkner, if you don't mind coming up. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's a privilege to come and just share all the amazing things that these people are doing individually as well as collectively. It gives us a chance to recognize for a bunch of different types of things, and I think it's important tonight if we can just start by recognizing an absolutely amazing young lady, and that is Miss Julia Pratt. If you recall from graduation last year, she was the one that received the standing ovation from her entire classmates, and I know she's got a very special spot in all of our hearts, and she will be greatly missed but never forgotten because she's truly made an impact on everybody, and is one that I think we will all carry and remember as we continue to do the things that we're recognizing tonight. So in honor of Julia, we'll share the rest of this. The next one I want to recognize individually is Mr. Nick Letterman. He was not able to join us tonight, but he did receive a letter of commendation from the National Merit Scholarship Program. So I'd like to read to you what it says to him on the back. Dear commended student, this letter of commendation signifies your designation as a commended student in the National Merit Scholarship Program. Your high selection index score placed you among the top 50,000 of over 1.6 million students who entered the 2018 National Merit Program by taking the 2016 preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. All of us associated with the program join officials of your high school in congratulating you for your excellent performance on the PSAT test. You are among about 34,000 committed students nationwide who have shown exceptional academic promise. Only the 16,000 highest scoring program participants who qualified as semifinalists will continue in the competition for merit scholarship awards. However, your performance on the qualifying test was outstanding, and recognition as a commended student is a credit to you, your parents, and your high school. The degree of success you achieve in the future will depend upon you, your use of your abilities, and your perseverance towards the goals you set for yourself. We offer you the best wishes with the hope that being named a commended student in the National Merit Program will broaden your horizons and encourage you to develop your potential to the fullest. Sincerely, the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. We did get a chance to honor Nick at Walk of Champions a few weeks ago, and he was sorry he wasn't going to be able to join us, but we will make sure he gets this certificate as long as the one from Dr. Layden. I have also some pamphlets. You want to take one and pass it down there for us, Beth? Ms. Carrie Oslager is our director of, or our assistant principal for activities and curriculum instruction, and she had a prior family obligation this evening, but she prepared this packet for us and shared the information with me so that I can do that on her behalf tonight. What you're going to see in this packet is a list in the very back of all the different clubs and activities, and then just some that are highlighting some of the things that they have been doing so far this year. The first one that you'll see in there is our Model UN Club. They started off the beginning of the year with a competition at Wabansie Valley High School where they were, two of the students, Sadie Egger and Sophie Carrillo, won for best position paper, and then they've also been preparing for a competition that they'll be heading to at the end of this week. They'll be downtown Chicago for 3.5 days in some additional competition there, so we wish them the best. The next one is the choir. They have 45 students strong on their staff this year. Bella Vargas and Bridget McCracken are heading them off on some great things. They are asking for all of you to pay close attention to their daily posts starting on December 1st on the KanelandChoir.com. They're going to be posting the 25 days of Christmas, so we'll see what they have to share there with us. Bass Fishing Club is in their sophomore year, as they like to refer to that. They're considering the Big Rock Quarry as their home base right now, and kind of off season as they're getting ready to do a lot of competitions as the season gets better in the springtime. And want to just thank Jacob Webster for his leadership in that group. Key Club did their trunk or treat at the high school in October to benefit UNICEF, and a lot of other community volunteer opportunities are going along with that group. Special group, the Lasso group, is really working very independently. Gary Baum from our Fox Valley Career Center has graciously offered to help kind of support that group, and so they actually go over to the Meredith campus and have their meetings over there, but very much run on their own, doing a lot of collecting of funds for hurricane relief for Puerto Rico, which is very near and dear to their heart. Two of the other clubs that are very active this year, as you're seeing on the next page, it's kind of fun when you see some new sponsors coming in and putting their flair and personalities on each one of the groups. And so the first of these two groups that I'd like to introduce to you is our FFA group. And if you notice in the front row here with these amazing new jackets that they've got on, I'd also like to introduce to you Brooke Heinisch, and she can share a little bit more about what's going on in their club.
Hello. My FFA chapter has been doing a lot of outstanding things, and you can read about it in your brochure that you got, but I'll be brief. A couple things that I just want to highlight. So we started the year off, our first contest was the horticulture contest, and we had Jonah Vagert place second, and we had Grant Baldridge place 7th overall, and then as a team we came in 3rd, which was really pretty good. We were only into the school year for about 2 or 3 weeks and jumped right into that contest, so there wasn't a lot of time to prepare, but we still did really well. Then after that, we went to National Convention in Indianapolis, where the Kaneland chapter represented our school very well. Then just recently, we were harvesting our fields, so I don't know if everybody knows, but we've got 2 20-acre plots that we farm right next to the high school. We had one of the best yields we ever had in the South Plot, which is where our corn was planted. We averaged about 230 or so bushels of corn per acre, which was really quite good. So Julianne has asked me to try and keep the roads clear when we are farming. We'll do our best to accommodate that, but no promises. And then I also just acquired a book grant, so we have got some children's books that we will be receiving shortly with a book grant that we got through the Kane County Farm Bureau. And we will be reading to the preschoolers that go to the Small Worlds preschool at Kaneland High School and educating them about agriculture. We did the same thing last year and got a book about harvesting different crops, and then the books that we got for this year are about pollinators, so they'll learn about how the crops get pollinated, and then we can follow through with those harvesting books as well. So, thank you.
And all of that, it's not even December 1st, so the fact that this is a very, very active chapter here is exciting. The last one on our list is Educator Rising. Renee Grish is the new leader for that group, and they started off their year with a kickoff with Aurora University, who they are affiliated with. We're involved in some homecoming activities, and then they did a Read for the Record, which is a national reading of the exact same book at the exact same time across the nation, and the book was Quackers, and they read that to about 522 elementary students within our district all at the same time. They also did a Walk for Education in November, and they're getting ready at the end of this week to go and spend a day at the University STEM School in Aurora doing some job shadowing there, so it's another great opportunity for those kids as well. And then if you see on the back, again, the list of all the things that are going on, and we'll highlight some more of those for you when we come back after the winter season. And for right now, though, I'd like to pass the mic off to Mr. Peter Goff to share the athletic side of Kaneland. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should share too, just so you know, there's a kind of an unhealthy competition between Mr. Goff and Mrs. Carrie Osliger regarding the quality of the brochures you're receiving. Carrie is deciding not to play the game with Mr. Goff, although he continues to play. So.
Real quick, so I can tweet it out. Everyone smile. There we go. Okay, what a, I like the microphone. Can I hold it or do I gotta, okay. I don't want to say anything. Just want to recap what we have. As you can see, a lot of our student athletes are here today. I'll zip through it as quickly as I can. First, I just did some highlights. I had all of my coaches every year. They do a season summary. Everyone does a really good job of doing a nice little summary, except for our boys cross-country coach. When you guys sit down tonight and need a little reading, you'll have about 3 pages to read from Coach Clary. Very good reading as well. He's back there in the back. If you could spin the camera around and make sure you see him. The first one I'd like to talk about is Tim Larson and his girls tennis team. None of the girls were able to make it today. Some were in madrigals and the other are already practicing for next year. But a couple milestones, as he put it, a historical season. They won the conference. They had 6 all-conference players. And the first time in Kaneland tennis history, we won the sectional in Class 1A, and we finished 10th. We had 2 young ladies that were our single players, Maddie Jersick and Piper Schefferman. They both made it to the 5th round and received all-state honors. And also we had 2 double teams. Anna Carlson and Aaron McMillan was one, and Haley Plock and Ingrid Naperkowski. I worked on that a couple of times a day and it didn't work. But I even had to go up and coach tennis because we didn't have enough coaches to go around. So let's give them a round of applause. I do have some of the our soccer, boys soccer. If those gentlemen could stand up real quick before I brag on them. I believe these are our captains, correct?
A few of them all conference, all sectional.
All sectional, yes. We had quite a few. Mr. Perillo in the back. Once again, another good season. We won the conference for the first time ever. We're the 2017 regional champions. We had a 16-game unbeaten streak. We had all 3 all-sectional players, which is state recognition. John McCaffrey, Tucker Johns, and Brian Bartholomew. Are they here? If you just raise your hand. Okay, yep. And the another great season. They lost in the sectional opener to Wheaton Academy, which I did believe made it to the state second or third. I forget what it was. But let's give them a round of applause. We have the boys golf team. I see we have one of our contestants right here. If Mr. Marshall could stand up. Again, he finished 5th. For the second year, he was in the top 5 for the state of Illinois. Let's give him a round of applause as well. We won the regional. Will finished 5th. Ryan Milton finished 17th. This is the 4th regional championship in our team's history. So the golf team, and they only graduated 1 senior. So we have everybody coming back next year. Let's give them a round of applause for Coach Meyer. I'll wait on the novel later. First, and then we'll go to the Kaneland girls cross country team. And if I could have Doug Ecker and Coach Franklin and his girls, please wave to everybody. Once again, they won the Burlington Central 2A Regional Championship. They qualified for the IHSA 2A state meet for the 6th time in 7 years, and they finished 8th as a team. Round of applause for that. We also had Rachel Rickman. Rachel, wave your hand. She finished 12th in the state, and for the 2nd year in a row, made All-State. So a round of applause for her. Senior Andrea Wells, who was the all-conference 3 times and ran in 3 state meets during her cross-country career here at Kaneland, has been given a scholarship to run cross-country and track for Division II Minnesota State University next year. Andrea, go ahead and... And here's the one that Coach Ecker really is always proud of. 9 of the 10 juniors and the seniors on this girls cross country team earn the Northern Illinois Big 12 Academic All-Conference honor. So a round of applause for them. I don't believe we have any of the girls volleyball team, but once again, for the first time since I've been here, they were knocked up to the higher division in 4A, where they had to go against St. Charles North, who I did know made it to state, and I believe they received second. But their their record this year was 28-8, beating 2 of the top 4 teams in the 3A state sectionals. They ended up second in the conference and making to the semifinals ever in 4A. Katie Jablonski and Sheikha earned first team all conference, and they have a good deal of their people coming back for next year as well. So let's give volleyball a round of applause. And we go to football. I know our first year head coach, Pat Ryan, is here. Pat could wave. Pat had a very good first year. I was very happy for him and his staff. We do have some of the football players, if they could stand up and be recognized right now. I believe it's our captains. So let's give them a round of applause. They finished 7-4 and 6-3 in the regular season, which put them in a tie for co-conference with Morris and DeKalb. Morris losing on a last-second field goal in the state finals in Class 4A. We made the playoffs. We made it to the second round. We had the NIB 12 East offensive player and an all-stater, Josh Marchuk. If Josh could stand up, please, and give Josh a round of applause. He was recognized this last weekend at NIU right before the 5A state tournament. I put it live and put it out there. Proud of him and his teammates. Last but not least, we'll go to boys cross country. As you can see, we have a lot of people in the back. If you guys would like to wave, I think the whole team's here. And one quick little note, I always see them always hanging around. And then one time Coach Clary's in my office and he starts playing the song Closing Time to tell them to leave. So they are a different bunch of kids, but they're awesome. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I went down and highlighted a bunch of things. But the Kaneland Knights in the Northern Illinois Big 12 Conference, which we hosted this year, we had to reroute. I forgot to give our coaches and our grounds crew a lot of credit for going out there and just getting the place. We had rave reviews. We had that and the sectional there this year. And a lot of people were walking up to me, hey, I have to run it next year. What do you need to know? And I go, I will point you in a couple different directions. I'm here just stirring, keeping everything there. But they did a wonderful job. Both teams at both levels finished second in the conference. We also had Matt Rickman won the individual championship in first place in the Burlington Central Regional. For the sectional, he was beat by 1/100th of a second by Sterling's Jacob Gebhardt. I was there at the finish line. It was probably the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my life. If he would have threw his hair out there, I think he would have got it. I did read one of the Mets pitchers cut his hair because he thinks by cutting his hair, it makes him throw faster. So you might want to see that. I thought of you when I heard that. Throughout the season, they were in the top 10 in Class 2A, avenging a loss to Gebhardt in the sectional. Matt Rickman earned his third All-State cross-country medallion when he crossed the finish line in 14:22. It was that moment that the Kaneland crowned its first individual state champion in the sport. Rickman finished less than a second ahead of the hard-charging Gebhardt. So let's give Matt Rickman a round of applause. Matt will be attending Bradley University in the fall. Also, we'd like to give a round of applause to his teammates who finished 6th place in the state finals. So give them a round of applause. And the last thing that I'll end with is that I went back and did a little fall season summary. In the conference, we had 7 teams. The lowest that we finished in the conference in any of our sports was second. We had 3 first-place finishes and 4 second-place finishes. We won 3 regionals, one sectional. Down at state, we had a 10th place team, a 6th place team, an 8th place team. And in the state finals for individuals, we had 5th, 19th, and 12th. And we had one state champion in Matt Rickman. And we just learned last night, I don't know if people follow me on Twitter, but Mr. Andy Drendel was named the Illinois Track and Cross Country Coaches Association North Division Coach of the Year in Class 2A Boys Track. So, like she said, it's only November, and we're heading into the winter season. We're in full swing. Girls game next week, or we have girls and boys, and wrestling this week as well. So thanks to the student athletes, and especially to their parents that run them all over the place here. So thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Faulkner.
Mr. Faulkner.
Thank you. I get to witness amazing things by our students every day during the school day. However, I also get to see a lot of awesomeness after school and extracurricular activities. So I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm actually going to call the sponsors and coaches and the teams up because I need to tweet this. It's probably one of my number one priorities. We're going to start with golf, our inaugural season. Miss Weiss, Mr. Mavius, you want to come up? And the golfers, I know you're somewhere here, right? Come on up. Come forward.
As Mr. Faulkner noted, this is our inaugural season for golf here at Harder Middle School. For those of you that don't know, we started bowling 3 years ago, so we tried to follow that same model, just trying to get kids involved, see who was interested, take them to, we were able to take 2 girls and a full boys team to the sectional this year for golf. We had 11 boys interested, right? Is that right? 11 boys. We obviously had to cut that down to 6. It was tough, but Mr. Mavius took on that responsibility. I was lucky enough to be able to say, yes, I can take both of you ladies. It's awesome. From that sectional, we advanced 1 girl and 2 boys to the state. Catherine Marshall, 7th grader, Josh Pell, 8th grader, and Cody Gans, an 8th grader. This was Catherine's first time in a tournament situation. Josh and Cody have a little bit more experience in that situation. However, never having done a state series of any kind, there's a little different type of pressure. So we were very excited that they played as well as they did. Catherine placed 18th, 28th. See, I can't even remember. However, she played much better at the state final than she did the sectional. We were very proud of her in her showing. Cody placed 18th. See there, I knew there was an 18 somewhere at the state final, and Josh placed 4th. So we were very happy with the experience that they got and how well they performed under pressure for the first time, because quite frankly, we said, are you interested? Sure. We took them to the driving range a couple times, and then we took them to the course. That was it. So it was really all about them. They're really all about their abilities. So we were really happy with how well they were able to do. So we thank everyone that has allowed us to kind of do these activities not really at the last minute, but without a full season, and being able to do that is an awesome thing, to be able to get more kids involved in things. So thank you.
All right, next we have an entire 8th grade volleyball team here. Coach Self and Coach Borgman and the girls, you want to come up? We're going to make room. We're going to make this happen.
Well, I'm Coach Borgman. I'd like to introduce the 8th grade white team volleyball team. They took first in conference this season, and they worked really hard from a 4th seed to come back and beat the 2 teams that they had lost in the weeks prior to. the conference tournament to get cooking, and did a really great job. Coach Self and I had the great privilege of working with these girls the last 2 years, and we are just really proud of them. So.
And last but not least, we have an awesome student council here. Mrs. Michaels and Miss Lawson, come on up, and I know we have some members of student council here. They do so many amazing things, not only for our school, but for our communities. And I believe they have maybe 1 or 2 things that they'll talk to you about.
Please talk into the microphone.
Okay, sure.
All right, yes, we do. We have an awesome student council who are very eager and willing to give. We want to acknowledge this past fall, they actually raised $1,200 to disaster relief. So we actually donated the money that they raised, not just them, but our entire school. They got everyone involved, and they decided we didn't need a prize. We didn't need to reward. We really wanted to give back to those in need. And so with that, we raised $1,200. So congratulations. The letter is from directrelief.org, and it says, "Dear friends at Kaneland Harder Middle School, thank you very much for being a part of Direct Relief and for your generosity. Your support enables the organization's mission to improve the health and lives of people affected by poverty or emergency situations by mobilizing and providing essential medical resources needed for their care." So we congratulate them. This is our panel. We couldn't do it without them.
That's all we have, but I wanted to say thank you because this is always a highlight of mine to see our students be highlighted for all the amazing things they do. So thank you. I appreciate that on behalf of Harder.
Thank you. Congratulations, everyone. You all make us proud. Thank
The last salute I had was just thank you to Tim and the IT department for making the live streaming happen tonight for the first time, and look forward to seeing how that goes. So thank you.
Okay, so everyone's welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we understand it can be boring and long, and so we are not offended at all if you want to go ahead and leave at this time. We'll give it just a few minutes to clear the room.
You can. It's good, Chad. It's good to see you. Please give Karen my condolences. Condolences, thank you. Sure. And we'll get together on Thank you. Good to see you, John. Congratulations on your kids. It's awesome. There's no editing. I'm okay with it though.
Okay.
You said 10 or more.
So for those who remain, this is the first opportunity for public comment in the meeting. There are normally 2 opportunities for public comment, one at the beginning and one at the end of the meeting. And the board values public input to inform our decision making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. The board does not enter into a debate or respond to questions during public comment. If you choose to speak publicly, there are a few rules that we would like to request of you. We ask that you stand, state your name and village of residence for the record, or your association with us, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. That being said, the floor is now open for public comment. Are there any public comments? Okay, hearing none, I will close the floor to public comment. Moving forward, tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items. The approval of the accounts payable and payroll from November 2017. The approval of the minutes of the November 13th, 2017 regular meeting. The approval of the resignations and employment of staff. The approval of high school course book change proposals. The approval of 2017 audit reports for the Kaneland District 302 and the Fox Valley Career Center. And the following informational items: the Kaneland 2020 update, the field trip notifications, and the approval of the Fox Valley Career Center fees for use of Kaneland facilities. We're looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. LePayton,
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak,
Aye.
Mr. Rivas,
Aye.
Mrs. Barber,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on now to our items of new business. The first item, J1, is the approval and discussion of the high school graduation committee proposal.
Yes, Mr. Rice is here to answer any questions that you might have. If you recall, on the 13th, at our November 13th, our last board meeting, we entertained a conversation on student recognition, graduate recognition, and I know that the board might want to have some more questions, more dialogue. For the record, I didn't receive any direct questions from anybody to forward onto Mr. Rice, but did want to provide this opportunity now to see if there were any questions from Mr. Rice or any other conversation on the recommendation that the board members might have.
Board members, questions? I would like to comment just for myself. I feel, I mentioned this last time, I feel that we didn't really address the most pressing issues with this solution. And while I'm in favor of adding the Latin honors, I am not in favor of getting rid of the valedictorian and salutatorian honors, as long as we're still continuing to calculate the class rank, and that if that's still part of the culture and we know who those students are at the top, it's my feeling that they should be given those honors. And so I am interested in knowing if other board members would be interested in entertaining. The recommendation is to approve it, getting rid of the valedictorian, salutatorian, and only doing the Latin honors. I'm asking if there's support from any other board members to add the Latin honors but keep the valedictorian and salutatorian honors until such time that there might be a change or more information and more research done on closing those mathematical loopholes in the class rank structure.
I think that's a good idea. I think it's always a good idea to have your valedictorian, salutatorian, but I also think it's imperative that students know that there is a process more than just those two. I know there's honors, I know there's all that kind of thing, but the Latin honor system is something that is kind of going forward from that. It's something that they're going to get in college anyway. It's to me, it's just adding and giving more students the opportunity to achieve. Okay, I do think it's important for a valedictorian and a salutatorian, but I would love to see them mingled together.
I was in favor. Just to reiterate what Teresa said, in not getting rid of valedictorian as well, because the reality beyond these walls is very competitive. Even tonight, it was mentioned there was a competition between the pamphlets. I mean, even internally it is. But if we're trying to emphasize college, career, and community readiness for the students, that it is imperative, in my view, that to prepare them from a competitive standpoint as well.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
While I generally support Ms. Witt's positions on most issues, in this one I'll disagree. I am in favor of moving to the Latin system. I'm in favor of getting rid of the valedictorian and salutatorian. However, if the majority of the board feels otherwise, I'm okay, but I would support the proposal as recommended to the board.
Mike, do you know, for people who do the Latin system, how many of them get rid of class rank?
I don't know that off the top of my head, no. So.
Some do and
some do and
did?
some don't, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think I could envision us going down the path where class rank goes away. And I think that seems to be something that you're still deciding how to handle class rank. I think was an open item. So I think moving to the Latin system makes a lot of sense. I don't know if we're then like in between right now, since we're kind of deciding on what to do with class rank, if we're in between the valedictorian salutatorian issue. It does seem a little bit of a hybrid, maybe.
So I would echo what Peter was saying, that I think that, you know, as what was presented last week, I would be in favor of that. I would not be opposed to a hybrid system, but I would like to know eventually what are we going to do about valedictorian and salutatorian, specifically how we're going to calculate it. And I think that's what Teresa had said, right? Like we're going to investigate how we calculate that out, because I think that's the sticking point for me, is that is it really evaluating what we say it's evaluating? And if it's not, then what are we doing with it? And to go to Pedro's point, then if it's competitive, let's make it competitive. Let's not make it a game or a system that you can kind of figure things out. Let's make it the actual competition. So with that said, I'm in favor of the Latin system because I think that that is a clean slate. But I would not be opposed to hybridizing it with the caveat that we consider fixing that system behind it.
Ryan, I think we haven't heard from you.
For once, I don't have a strong opinion about something. I really don't. I see the benefits of both. I really don't have a strong opinion about one or the other than if we're going to fix something in order to, and this is where I don't have a lot of experience. I don't have children of the age that I understand completely the ins and outs of how that whole system works. So I guess I don't know what I think about this yet. I'm reserving judgment until I figure out what that fix looks like. So I guess for me, that piece of information might be helpful to sway with me one way or the other, but that leads me to the question of, do we want to see what that is, or does it matter to anyone else? Because I don't feel that we have to do this tonight. They're not starting school till the fall, so. But if everyone else is ready to move forward, I'm more than happy to do that too.
Mike, do you have an idea of what that fix might look like?
So our next steps that we'll take as a graduation committee and then as the school at large would be there's basically three things, but one of the biggest ones to address what you're talking about would be looking at how we weight courses and kind of where those capstone opportunities exist for students, with the idea of trying to ensure we have a capstone at the end of every kind of pathway that students might take. Sure. And what does it mean to be in a capstone course? What's the rigor of that course look like? I think last time we talked a little bit about not just adding that tag on existing courses, but creating the criteria and then saying what courses would actually meet that. And in some cases, it might mean bringing new courses onto the books while we're looking for new pathways for students.
Sure.
So it's a solution that we can get closer to. It'll probably take a few years to make perfect. I think there'll always be some loophole that could be found, or some way, or an extra class in a career field. Then maybe this is not. There'll be one field that probably has more than others. But I think we can get a lot better than we are now. Our internal, barring any different guidance from you all, our internal timeline was to kind of spend the rest of this year into next year looking at that, and hopefully bring back that proposal around the same time next year. And along with that, kind of having looked at Knights of Distinction again as well, and kind of what makes up that award as well. So those were kind of our next two big things. The third one on there, like you guys have alluded to, is to kind of look at class rank and what does that mean. That's kind of a longer conversation because we definitely have more time until the students coming in would be impacted by that.
Does eliminating class rank negatively impact our students when they're applying for college?
I don't know the answer to that. The only place that I can kind of pull from is, we talked with Yorkville, for example, and they keep class rank. They don't share it with their students, but when colleges call, they still give it to the colleges. So I'm not, from the limited research that I did on this specific topic, because it's kind of was one that was down the road for us, but from just anecdotally, I don't know of many that completely got rid of it. They just kind of to your question, Shannon, they kind of just hide it. But it's still there because it's, for a lot of schools, it's built into how their student information system works. So it's there. They just may not make use of it.
So do colleges normally call?
I don't know. I didn't.
Because normally that's on a transcript, and
Right.
they don't have to call. So
Right,
I
but-
think they might not call because it's an extra step that they normally wouldn't have to do.
True that. That's totally true. Yorkville, and again, I didn't really investigate this one specifically, so I'd need to go back and double check everything I'm sharing with you guys tonight. Please know that. But it seemed like they took efforts to hide that from their students. I'm not sure where it landed on the transcript, but my understanding would be they would have to remove it from that as well if they don't want the students to know. So it seemed like it was more of a, if needed, they could provide it. And that's the next kind of round of research we would do, is those schools that maybe aren't using class rank as much, why and how did that rollout go for them?
We used to have it in Tyler, and mysteriously got put away somewhere. So we kind of went that path as well, apparently.
We still have class rank, and students are aware of it.
It's not on Tyler, as it was.
I don't know what the printout looks like, but it's definitely still there. So if there's a way we need to advertise it differently, we can look into that.
Personally, I'd like to see it back in there, so that if the students are going to compete, and then there's different levels, obviously. I personally would want to put it back in there.
And are you speaking more like the online display or the report cards?
The online.
Okay.
I think the characteristics of it now is if you come to the office and ask for it, we'll give it to you. I believe that's what my students had to do. My children had to do it last year.
Okay.
Mike, do you see any downfalls to doing a hybrid system, to doing?
Off the top of so I haven't had a lot of time to prepare for that question. I know like the first thing that jumps to mind is just the workload on our student services department is when you trade kind of one for the other, it's not adding a lot, it's kind of maintaining, but to do both, and not having spoken to them about what that would mean, I can assume that would kind of create some more work for them. Outside of that, I don't know that on the student side, I mean, it's still adding more honors to them. We're still celebrating their achievements. I don't see a negative impact on the student side. It's just that ability to do both and to have both systems, what the ins and outs of that will be. I just don't work with it enough.
It would be the same system because you're calculating
Right.
GPA, and it would just be, once you did that, and if you're keeping class rank, you would know who those top students were. And
Agree.
It would just be naming them.
Agree. Okay. Off the top of my head, that's the first place that I think I'd want to ask more to be able to answer that fully, is just they're the ones that do the work. So I'd want to ask them, and I can see two things instead of one probably being something more additional to them. I just don't know to what
I'm sure
extent.
it's additional administrative work, but how much of a burden that is, I don't know.
Sure.
One of the things that kind of the big picture, if you will, is in my view, is have students reaching out for different things. Tonight was one of the merit scholarship acknowledgement was provided to one student. But even last presentation, you mentioned about the Knights of Distinction. Some students not knowing that they were going to get that, which is surprising. But I guess where I'm going with that is there a identification of those, like the Illinois Scholar or those type of things, what it means to students, where they can kind of just, say, hey, I qualify for that, or whatever,
Yeah.
as opposed to getting just surprised.
Right. And I think
So do we keep a list of that in definitions?
we do in the student services department, and so that's one of the pieces I think we need to share better, and that's why we want to revise. Here's what Knights of Distinction means. Here's what you can aim for. If we're going to do Latin or we don't, here's what you can aim for. I think part of all of this is the publicity of what students have available to them and how they can kind of strive for those honors. So it's there, but kind of like you had said about class rank, if it's not clear enough to people, then that's a procedural piece that we can change. We can be better about advertising those things.
Other comments, questions?
A question on all right, so either system are honors for doing well academically, but those honors aren't given until graduation. So it's kind of irrelevant to the application process for college?
Yeah, where sometimes you start to see it a little bit more as scholarships because some of those are still awarded after students have been accepted. But when I did reach out to the schools themselves, they said they've made their admissions decisions usually way before these are bestowed.
Okay, so I don't mean to belittle it, but there's not a lot of long-term value in.
Sure.
Don't take that the wrong way,
I don't.
please. They're not going to get a better scholarship or different school based on these awards.
I'm gonna beg to differ in
Yes.
some
Please.
schools. I think there are different timelines for different types of schools. State schools, you know, I know go earlier. I know my kids had that information prior to applying and they're in private colleges and universities. So they had it before that because they did not find out until May 1st. Some people find out in September, or there's a rolling date, you know, all through the, you know, or there's early action and early decision and, you know, all those things that happen in the end of the year. And at that point, it would just be whatever class rank you were at that point, you know, but.
So valedictorian and salutatorian, or the top 4% is in the slideshow, that can't be determined until the school year's done based on the grades that they
They do it like 3 weeks before graduate or so.
No, they do it. It's up till the last test, the last assessment that the seniors have. That's one of the pieces that I have in my head when you guys are asking about the impact it could possibly have, is doing both systems. And the the Latin honor system should be fairly done by that point, but that's still, because they calculate out to 3, 4, 5th decimal
How many
places.
decimal points do they really go? They go out a long way if they need to.
Yes, they will. I think they will go all the way out to 10 if needed, I believe is the farthest. I don't know that we've ever had to, but I think that's kind of the written policy. So
They
they'll,
announce it at the senior academic honors night is when they do that.
right, which is typically that last week of school, and students a lot of times have taken their last assessments by then. So to your point, what I was going to, all of the places I asked, and I tried to get kind of every level, at least Illinois, none of them said it had an impact, but it's always going to come back to that individual school you go to. There's always going to be those places where it might make a difference. It seemed like, for what I looked at in general, and there's only 4 schools, so I can't make a huge generalization, it didn't seem to be a major player in their acceptance for those 4.
I think the title, I think the rank is.
Rank maybe
whatever
very
rank
much,
at
yeah.
in any point in time is what the colleges are gonna look at if they look at that information.
And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to keep that as we transition to this, to still make sure that was available to our students. So
if we have to keep the rank in order for the application process in the schools and whatnot, am I understanding correctly, it's just a matter of collating the data to figure out who got the highest rank? So I guess I fail to see the harm in doing both at the same time, because we're doing it anyway to.
I think it's just that little added to the end of it, you know?
Okay.
Well,
And quite honestly, both of those things are probably end up under the summa cum laude anyway. You know, I mean, they're gonna be in that position.
they have to
a
be.
big part of this is it's motivating, right? So we talked about that at the last meeting, right? You brought this up, that they're chasing themselves. So even if they don't know necessarily where their rank is or know exactly what they're at, they're still working towards that, right? So it's motivating, it's pushing, and it's that internal competition versus external. It's all good stuff, right? Because it's all moving. So both systems might be useful then that way, because some people are internally motivated, some people are externally motivated.
Right.
I would hate to see the vote go down so that we vote no.
Sure.
And then we don't get the Latin honors that it seems that we have unanimous agreement on. We have seem to have a unanimous agreement that we want to expand the Latin honors. It's just a question of whether or not we want to get rid of valedictorian, salutatorian. By my weight here, hearing people talk, I think there are at least 4 people that don't want to get rid of those honors. So we can, I don't know which, you know, if those who want it purely the recommendation that was given by the district to get rid of valedictorian, salutatorian, if you want to do that motion first, or if you want us to do the other one first, I don't know how, in what order? Or?
Can I ask a question for consideration? If indeed the board chooses to have both of them, as Mike and the committee are looking at possible fixes or adjustments to different things, if next year's class comes in with the understanding of a valedictorian and salutatorian and the Latin honor system, then at some point 2 years down the road or a year down the road, if there is some fixes or some changes and we take some of those things away, then is there a following class that's 2 years behind that is no longer going to have the val-sal because we found a fix to the class rank or something? Do you understand what I'm asking? Is there going to be staggered? So would it, if we move forward with it and we're inclusive of all of it, that's one thing. If we move forward and we're inclusive, waiting for some changes, and then 2 years down the road or in the spring you come back with a different recommendation, should we wait until that work is done and then come with one that we'll move forward with? It's just a question.
Okay. I get that. I thought that, I mean, the mathematical loopholes exist in class rank and in the, which is how the
Which is what
valedictorian
impacts the valedictorian.
So those have to be fixed regardless, and in addition to the capstone courses, I mean, we have to fix, how a student can take a study hall and then jump ahead of their peers in the honor system, in whatever honor system we choose. So, it seems like that has to happen. So I guess it's a matter of, do you have a preference whether we wait
So that,
and take no action, table it?
it's interesting. That work will happen regardless. So you get, just so you know, I feel somewhat bad speaking on behalf of the entire student services department, but I think and if you're layering, if we just said let's just table it, we're in effect saying we're not going to add the Latin honor system. We're excluding students from celebrating some of their achievements that we all kind of seem in favor of. We're going to do this work to adjust the capstone systems, the weighting system. All that work's going to happen regardless of whether Latin's there or not. Personally, and people can be mad at me later, I guess I would say let's do them both. Give it a year. Come back next year. We'll have a presentation similar to this one. We don't really necessarily even have to include another recommendation about valedictorian, salutatorian, unless that's what would make the most sense for people. But we could look at what does this new kind of landscape look like as far as how students can weight their grades and take courses and and at that point we can decide do we still, was this next coming class actually the last year we'll have a valedictorian, salutatorian, and then we're going to get rid of it. So I guess I'm kind of in favor. If I would like to see more students awarded for the work they do, personally. So I think if we layer that on with the understanding of the next kind of piece of this puzzle that we'll bring to you is that what does the landscape look like with weighting courses? Respectfully, I would be very comfortable with that. I'm sure there's some folks that'll still be underwhelmed with my support of them, but I will do my best to make them feel good. That work's going to happen anyway. So I think that has to be the next thing that we do, and everybody is understanding of that. So I think that's where I would go for what it's worth.
Okay. So how do those who wanted it in the pure form of the recommendation, how do you feel about moving forward with both? Or would you like to make a motion and take the vote on the original recommendation?
We've done it in the past where we've gone through it and voted and then come back with a recommendation.
And I guess I'm asking.
Well, or the other option is that whoever makes the motion amends the motion and does not make this motion, makes an amended motion. That's what you're asking.
Right.
And I think that's up to whoever wants to make the motion.
Okay.
Is there a procedure that we need to go through this one, or can we modify this?
No, I'm just trying to be fair because there are differing opinions. So, okay, if that's the case, I move that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the addition of the Latin honors system to the graduation,
Acknowledgement?
Recognition structure.
There you go.
Right there.
leaving the existing valedictorian, salutatorian, graduate recognition structure in place.
Beginning of the class in 2022?
There's no date on here, but yes,
Yes.
beginning of the class of 2022.
Is this something that could be happening before then?
We could, but I would strongly suggest we don't, because a lot of the students that are in the system now kind of started with the understanding of here's what it looks like, and so to change it might actually have a more negative impact than positive. If we're keeping valedictorian, salutatorian, we could probably layer it on if we wanted to.
We give you more recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my mind I was thinking if we got rid of valid, but if we're just layering it on there, we probably could do that sooner.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Are we gonna do it sooner or later? Did we decide?
Do what sooner?
You said 2022?
The class of 2022 or
2022.
sooner.
You guys just decided that it was possible to do it sooner than 2022.
Her motion is 2022.
But our motion is for 20,
But it
okay.
hasn't been seconded yet, so if she wants to amend her
That's what I was
motion, she
asking.
can.
We could amend that.
Mike?
Can I just to interject something? And for what it's worth, if you went forward with the motion that you just made with 2022, with my understanding of if we can do it sooner, we can. I would hate to say let's do that this year, not knowing some of the implications it might have or some of the things might need to change. So I would commit to you guys to saying this as soon as we can do this, we'll do this. But I would hate to not be representing our team at the high school well enough and miss some point that would make it very difficult for them to do this year. And I don't think that exists, but I just want to make sure that I don't want to overlook something and then be unable to fulfill that promise.
Just add the words no later than.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
No later than the
2022.
class of 2022.
Yeah, we're
To be decided by then.
I think it just says no later than. then.
We can decide when it's applicable.
That's your
So-
motion?
Yes.
I'll
So,
second it.
okay.
Beth, do you have the?
Yeah, should we have that?
Okay. Motion by Mrs. Witt, seconded by Mrs. Padwack, that the Kaneland Board of Education approve the addition of the Latin honor system, beginning with the class of 2022? No, that's not right.
Beginning no later than.
Beginning no later than.
The class of 2022, keeping the existing valedictorian, salutatorian, graduate recognition structure in place.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion has been made and seconded. Is there further discussion?
Maybe I missed it, but it does include the Latin honor system is also in there, right? I don't know if I heard it. Sorry,
Yes,
I just heard
approves the
that
addition of the
motion's-
Latin
okay.
honor system.
Thank you. I just heard that motion several times in fragmented words.
And the only thing I would say is, I mean, you guys were interested in adding the Latin honor system. You were preparing perhaps to do that anyway. So, you know, the one thing the board seems unanimous in is expanding those honors. So I think I would like to encourage, I don't know what my fellow board members think, but I would like to encourage people to do their best to do it.
I'm with you 100%.
Okay.
I'd like to also add that we're going to continue to do that work. I know you said it several times, Mike, but we're going to do that work to address those issues, those mathematical issues.
We'll be done.
Yeah.
And that's on the next list, right?
So we'll start that the next time we meet. Actually, well, I don't have my microphone anymore, so what you guys do.
And you know, whenever you get that research done, I mean, I think our intent is that you would come back whenever you have that, you know, all that information, and we would then reevaluate at that time.
And just so I'm clear, and I sorry if I'm breaking protocol. This is new for me. So our internal timeline was to kind of do that work over the course of the next year. Is that timeline workable, or is there something else that you want to see? Do you want updates as the committee makes progress? I want to make sure you guys have the information that you want, and that I bring it to you in a timely fashion. So I guess what I'm taking away from this is just to make sure that we get our Latin honor system on as soon as possible and bring our work with the kind of leveling of the playing field, for lack of a better term, as soon as possible. Our timeline for that was about the same time next year. If we can expedite that, we will. But I guess this isn't a formal vote, I would guess, but if that timeline works for you, that's the timeline we'll follow. Okay.
Everyone agree that timeline still works?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think anyone is asking for you to accelerate the process just to do it faster.
Sure.
If in the course of the process you have something that's substantive or a decision point where you feel like a recommendation could be made, or we can do something, you know, you could always do that at an earlier time. But I don't think there's any sense of you need to accelerate that process. It sounds like you have that mapped out at least in broad strokes.
It sounds like a committee's already met.
We've talked about kind of our
Mapped out
plan.
And pretty much put the thing together, so what's feasible for you. I'd hate to change that for you.
Okay, thank you. So it'll be no later than a year. We're using that term no later tonight. It will be about this time next year that we would bring something back, and if we can do it earlier, we definitely will. And the same with adding the Latin honor system, the sooner the better, and we'll give you an update on that as soon as I talk with my team at the high school and we find out kind of how feasible that is. We can at least give you an update.
Okay.
Okay.
And that could happen in a weekly update, I would think. Right.
As the information comes out, I can provide that.
Okay.
So.
Are our counselors very involved with this process as well?
Yeah.
Because they're intricate in this part.
We've got a few counselors on the committee itself, but kind of the smaller working committee, and then I'll meet with the team as a whole, so they're definitely very involved.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor that has been made and seconded, and so if there's no further discussion right now, we'll have a roll call, please.
Mrs. Pavlak?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber?
Aye.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. LePayton?
Aye. I'm not going to vote against Latin.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
This meeting's being live streamed, right?
Mhm.
My wife tried to log in 3 times and can't get it.
Okay, so we'll move on now with item J2, which is the discussion of trimesters for early childhood through 5th grades.
Yes, Dr. Mum is here tonight, and what she will share with us is 7 years in the working. A series of different committees over the years have had this conversation, and based on the School Day Research Committee that's recently undertaken the conversation and the topic, Dr. Mum is going to bring us some information tonight. And again, it's just information and discussion, as with other items. If the board moves forward with it with a recommendation, it could come in consent at the next board meeting or for discussion if needed.
Thank you. So Dr. Layden is exactly right. We actually started this conversation about 7 years ago when we really got heavily into standards-based grading at the elementary level. I know probably one of the main questions already is why is this really just for an elementary discussion? And that's the key piece why. Every district we researched, when they switched to standards-based grading, the ability to be able to observe students longer, to get them to self-reflect longer on the standards, to be able to more accurately monitor their progress through the different levels of standard-based grading, it just was a better process to go to trimesters, to allow larger periods of time where you can do multiple assessments, multiple observations before kind of that final reporting period. Not that that would mean that we wouldn't be communicating with parents' progress over time probably just as frequently as we are now. And in the memo, you can read some of the ways that already we've had some increased ability of students sharing their progress with parents, with Seesaw, with Flipgrid, some electronic communication. But really when they went to more standards-based grading and you have 40 to 60 different standards on a report card, that reporting to be more and more accurate to the exact level they are in the standard space needed a little bit more time for observation, especially in your first quarter, which would be our first trimester. The other huge benefit, and so that's why it really is K-5, because at this time, 6-12 is not on standards-based grading. Mike and I have discussed a couple times if by chance long-term through personalized learning implementation, we discuss standards-based grading at the middle school level a little bit more, or even at the high school level, then that option of trimesters might be something we come back and discuss beyond elementary. But right now it's really just for elementary because of the reporting structures. Trimesters allows that time to make sure you set up the routines, you make sure you set up the time for student self-assessment and have,
I'm sorry, I read the memo and I don't understand how you're still got the same amount of classroom time. So
You do.
You made the statement that it helps you're more time. There's the same amount of time, so I'm not understanding the underlying point. That you're
Sure,
trying to make.
it's longer time before you report formally to the parent with the final report card with grades that stand and stay with that child in their CUME file. And so you would have essentially, instead of just till the last week of October, you have till mid-November to make your final observation on all of those standards to parents. You're right, you're still establishing the same routines, you still have the same day-to-day, but the report card doesn't go out. It only goes out in trimester reporting periods. It's just a function of not a different structure, not a different instruction, just a different function of reporting.
But I guess the part I don't understand is, let's say the parents aren't paying all that much attention. The first time they're going to get noticed is weeks later with the trimester system versus quarter system.
Yep, they would be getting a progress report prior to that, and the progress report would fall probably about what did we decide? About a week or so in. We want to make the first progress report a little bit further into, a little bit closer, so that they can have kind of that first update. But that final report card that really stays with them with all the observation would come weeks later. You are correct.
When you say final, do you mean end of first trimester?
End of first trimester. Okay. Yep, I'm seeing it as 3 final report cards and 3, I think you're right. At any given day, I would hope our educators are communicating with parents. Parents are, looking. We're still trying to find as many different ways to communicate the ongoing progress of students so that communication when it's final at the first trimester, second and third, is not a surprise or an aha moment, but more or less, yes, I saw that progression towards that point in time. I think when we researched with other districts, what they were finding is many times they were filling out that first quarter report card or second quarter and feeling like we are just on the cusp of finalizing some units, finalizing some more learning, that if I was to meet with you as a teacher to a parent 2 weeks from now, their level that I would tell you probably had shifted. And so the way that, like our math units, for an example.
I understand that, but
okay.
That's going to be, I'm still saying you could make the same argument for quarters versus what you're saying for trimesters. I'm not getting because you could make the exact same, well, yeah, you're almost always there with quarter system versus trimester. I still don't get it.
You can in some respects, but when you look at, especially when we shifted to Common Core, they essentially took most math units into 9 sections. So you essentially have sets of 3 into your math curriculum map. When you look at that and take your sets of 3 or your 9 units and try to put it into 4 quarters, you're almost always ending the quarter with about a week or 2 left of your 3rd unit. And so trimesters really gave you the ability, especially in math, a little bit in writing as well. Language arts and reading, you don't have that as much because it really is developmental on their reading progress. But math especially, trimesters gives you the ability to be able to complete unit, not that we don't spiral and reteach and those types of things, but come to a further conclusion for students in that group of 3 unit sets to make the 9 units.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. But you're right. It's not more days. It's not more time. It's just the flow of the actual final reporting period that assisted in making it more accurate on the report cards. The other benefit it does do is it changes a little bit of the discussion that we found at parent conferences with districts that do it. Some did move their parent conferences later, but those that did not and kept their parent conferences the same schedule as their secondary, like we are proposing, really felt that was a prime time to have goal-setting discussions, reflective discussions, start bringing in some more student-led conferencing, and not focus the entire parents' meeting just on that report card and kind of going through the report card. It also gave districts that we researched the ability to walk parents through the report card before they received their child's report card so they could understand and really use it as more of a learning template for the family than trying to, we're finding when we talk with our staff, a lot of the parent conferences are, help me, kind of interpret what my report card is. And in that 20-minute time, they don't get tons of time to actually talk about their student often. And so what districts that have switched to trimesters they keep the parent conferencing and they allow it to, let's talk about the report card structure, let's talk about what it will look like, and then let's goal set. What are we hoping to see on that report card? Here's the progress that we have so far. We're wrapping up these things. We're hoping for this to, be the final outcome for your child. And it's been much more of a collaborative conversation, they felt, in the districts we talked to, than kind of a reporting based on this paper conversation at conferences. So that was another huge benefit. It does not change the school calendar. It does not add days. Everything remains the same except for the actual dates reports are sent home. Secondary would be sending them home on the quarter basis, and we would send them home a couple weeks later. Our progress reports would almost fall kind of in that middle point, and so you would have parents that, if you had multiple students at different levels, you would get a report card for one student at one time, and then the trimester a little bit later. Some of the districts that we looked at, and again, we started looking 7 years ago when we did progress standards-based grading, but at that time felt, let's just do standards-based grading for a while, see how that process of reporting goes, and then come back and rediscuss it. It did get rediscussed at our advisory council about 2 years ago, and then at that point in time, there were some other shifts with some of the Common Core standards. So again, we wanted to try them in a reporting function before we discussed trimesters again. At negotiations, when we renegotiated, trimesters did come up again in some of the workload conversations of reporting, and so we took it to the School Day Research Committee. The School Day Research Committee is a K-12 committee and really felt at this time this was just a K-5 discussion because they were the only ones doing standards-based reporting, and so the Teacher Advisory Council was where the final discussion and research happened. This fall we did research and phone conferences with different districts that have done it. All the ones that we had contacted previously 7 years ago, we recontacted some, and then we had one or two other ones like Crystal Lake, who we had just had relationships because of different connections through personalized learning and other opportunities that we asked them for feedback as well. You can see kind of the proposed calendar and how the dates would shift for reporting. And then out of our comparable districts, we do have Batavia, Geneva, Huntley, and St. Charles that also made the switch more recently within the last 3 to 5 years. So you can see the districts that we discussed. Some of them that we talked to did not do it. They did research it and then chose not to at that time and wanted to spend a little bit more time just trying standards-based grading, manipulating their systems a little bit, and had not gone to trimesters. Question, like Dr. Layden said, it's more, we've been discussing it. The Teacher Advisory Council did take a vote on it to move it forward, and this is our movement forward to get feedback from the board. We will be meeting with the Citizens Advisory Council, our committee, on Thursday to ask questions and, field things we need to answer, take it back to the Teacher Advisory Council, and at that point, either come back with the answers for a full proposal or decide that the questions brought up either by the board or the Citizens Advisory Committee made the proposal not needed.
Sarah, I had one question for you. One of the things I hear parents talk a lot about are the clusters and reassigning per cluster.
Mm-hmm.
Will this have any impact on that? Because I know after a couple weeks, students will assess and then another pretest and those clusters will shift. Does this help or hurt that process, or what impact does that have?
The one thing that it could help with, the flexible grouping for math and moving students from cluster to cluster will remain still the same based on the curriculum map. But what will happen is that the change in clusters will come closer to the final reporting periods. So it'll feel more like a natural time to restart a cluster after the grade report has gone out and a conversation with the parents on their process has been completed. Right now, we're really trying to send some of the standards-based report cards out with, again, a couple weeks left in that cluster. And so they're not getting a full view of what their child has completely done in that cluster to understand what's still left and what they still need to learn.
Thank you.
Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of touched on this, and I'm still trying to grasp it. There's in the middle of the first paragraph. There's a topic in not to read the whole sentence, but it says other various topics that came out of the most recent negotiations. What are we talking about there?
In negotiations, we had many workload topics that were brainstormed. Trimesters was one. Different structures of snow days was another. The structures of finals before Christmas break. And so all of those were taken to school day research. Some of them we've kind of researched, weeded out, and said there's no further need. And a couple of them remain. This was one of them that did remain.
So where I was going with that is, does that bring concerns to contractual implications?
The contractual implication of the way it came up during workload is the amount of reporting standards-based grading has. And when you do it 4 times a year, you're actually doing it possibly 8 times a year. You don't have required progress reports for every child, but you have 4 required report cards, 1 required progress report, and 3 optional progress reports right now. And trimesters does lessen that workload down to 3 required report cards, 1 required progress report, and 2 optional progress reports. So it does take, as a 4th grade teacher, I am not going to fill out the standards-based report card 4 times. It lessens my workload to 3 times.
But it also reduces the contact points with the parents.
It could. Yep.
So I would not be in favor of that.
I think one of the things that you're exactly right. It could lessen the contact with parents. At the same time, what we found when we talked with other districts is the report card wasn't the best communication. The best communication was more the assessment, the ongoing conversation.
I agree.
And that time could be increased.
But that doesn't mean that all parents or students or the whole situation is ideal.
Yep.
But currently, we have a required 5 contacts with a possible 8 contacts with the parents.
Correct.
And you're suggesting changing it to 4 required and possibly 6 total.
Yep. I think
Or am I focusing on the wrong thing?
No, you're exactly right. We had this exact conversation at the Teacher Advisory Council many times. It lessens the amount of paper required or electronic required report cards, hopefully, but not guaranteed. It would increase the amount that you would be able to have more fluent conversation, have the students sharing through some of the things that they are already implementing with Seesaw and those types of things. You're exactly right, though. It is not guaranteed. Right now we have up to 5 guaranteed. This would lessen it. The one thing that it does require and add, though, the parent conference would be a required one, that the report card would not be the sole communicating factor. So I actually see it as 3 required report cards, 1 required progress report, and 1 required parent conference. That is truly a parent conference without the report card paper. And so you're going to 5 required parent communications for every child, away from our current 5, 4 required report cards, 1 required progress report. Because our current parent conferences is very much driven by that report card. And so I feel it actually keeps us a little bit on a level playing field where we have 5 contacts with parents at minimum. It has to be many, many more than that. And that's what we currently have in our structure. But we can also disagree that the parent conference one doesn't replace a 4th report card.
Well, Sarah, as you go up in grades,
Mm-hmm.
and there's less and less, I don't make a general statement, but if a child is doing really good, parents kind of like, okay, we're fine, we're not going to show up, type of thing. How does that progress in the elementary level? Is that, you see that as well?
We do not. We typically report 100% participation at all of our K-5 grades. We have not seen a dip, and in fact, our middle school proved that it's actually going to go more intensively by going to student-led conferences this year. They, even at the middle school level, by making that shift, they had the higher percent of attendance this year than ever. And so we haven't seen that K-5. What we do see is as parents have gone through the parent conference with the report card, the conversation as they get their students older and older goes less about the document and more that conversation with the child, and that's really what we're striving for at every level versus just on this report card document. But our attendance numbers still I think our lowest school this fall was at 99% K-5.
And back to kind of piggyback on Brian's comment earlier was, we're taking some away, some of the interactions away. So
Possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
I think the revamp of the parent conference would be kind of what keeps us level.
So would this be handled through a memorandum of understanding or something with because it would require agreement with, isn't this, because the school day looks differently in the contract at this time?
The school day actually would not look any different because in their contract, we don't say when the reporting periods are. Their hours of contact time, all of that is, all the language that is in the contract would remain exactly the same. The one document that would look different is the school calendar that's published by approval from the state board. It would have on there elementary report card day, secondary report card day. But there is no KEA contract language that would need to be amended.
Sarah, can you explain to me the differences between the progress report and the report card? Like, how do they look different?
Yep.
For the parent?
The report card has all of their standards from the Common Core standards on them, and so sometimes you may have 40 up to 60. The progress report really talks about learner characteristics primarily, and then it has an open area where you as the teacher can put in a certain standard or content comment, but it does not list all of the standards by individual line.
So it sounds like in this model, it might be useful to have more of those kinds of conversations, right? More of those progress reports than final grades.
Yep.
So if we're going to go to a trimester model, couldn't we then say, okay, here's the trimester, but you have mandatory progress reporting in that trimester section? So we alleviate this issue of contact with parents, but it's now growth-based as opposed to finalized, right? Like this is that you've solved this grade, so to speak.
Absolutely. The Teacher Advisory Council even discussed right now the first progress report is required, but the second, we could require both the first and second.
Right.
Or what some districts have done, which we thought was an interesting alternative, is they required the second one. On the first one, it wasn't a progress report, but yet a kind of here is the focus for our work this trimester. Because we know not all parents go and look at the curriculum maps or might not understand the standards. So it became much more of kind of a curriculum memo to the parents with an open section where they could indicate, a strength or area to improve for their child at the bottom. Then they had the first trimester report card. Then second progress report was required, and then the third one was optional based on anything you wanted to further communicate before the final report card came out. So I think there are some alternatives that we absolutely could add in to make sure that that parent contact time remains exactly level, if not a little bit more.
So, Sarah, how did the conversation go when you started talking about setting parents' expectations to K or 1 through 5, K to 5, whatever this is, and then you get them the expectation going, and then they transition into the next level, and then what?
Next level meaning grade span up to middle school?
Yes.
I honestly think that if we can use some of our parent conference time to have goal setting, expectation meetings, it fits perfectly. And I've talked to Mr. Faulkner about it with the theory of student-led conferencing. The theory of student-led conferencing is really that student self-reflecting and projecting, so what do I need to do differently in each of my content areas, with probing questions from the teachers as they kind of spiral around. I think if we can facilitate that in our parent conferences, our parents will get very used to that process, that they will become even more of an active member in the student-led conference because you'll know, so what kinds of questions do I ask at the student-led conference? You would have had 5 experiences previous to that, or 6 experiences, so that it can be more of a partnership as we grow into the middle school. I know that was one of the feedback comments as we talked to some of the middle school parents and to Mr. Faulkner from student-led conferences being adopted full scale here at Harder. The parents enjoyed the conversation with their child, but they just didn't know what to ask. because they had always kind of gone to a parent conference previous where, we talked just about this report card, or the teacher gave, some information. And so they would, they had even suggested at one of our curriculum chats, could we even just have probing questions that we should be asking? And I think we can model that over time with every parent by making this change as well.
So can you give us an idea, and not all the ways, I guess I see the benefit to teachers and administrators, and I see some benefit to students, but I guess I appreciate when things are directly tied into the strategic
sure.
plan.
Yep.
Can you tell me how this ties into the strategic plan and personalized learning?
Very, very heavily. Okay. There's two things that we found in talking with our local districts, and many of our local districts are not doing personalized learning fully implemented. And so they may have shared with us, but not shared, well, this exact cell is where it links. And so I'm going to make some of those links after this. In the conversation with some of the other districts is what they found. Students had the ability to better self-reflect on some of the standards themselves. And in two of the districts, they're actually having the students complete the report card and the teacher complete it, and they have a comparison conference prior to the final report card going out. To me, that is personalized learning 110%. It covers literally the 3 core cells, as well as about 5 of the teaching and learning cells, which are that next layer out. That student choice, that student voice, and being able to do the self-reflection, as well as building in the learner profile. I think allowing trimesters gives us a little bit of time, as some other districts said, to talk about routine self-reflection, and to me, time for initial learner profile before we really jump heavily into that first major math unit of study. And so although none of the districts around us literally said anything about a specific personalized learning cell, it matches beautifully with that. And our focus cell for next year proficiency-based measures, that is what standards-based reporting is. And so it ties nicely to it, okay. Although we're doing some of it already. You had a question on something I said there.
Yeah, I don't see how you couldn't just say the exact same thing about quarters.
I think right now
I'm still missing it.
Yep. I think right now, especially with our math maps, teachers feel the need. We allow guided reading to wait 3 weeks to start, but for math, they feel they have to start that first Friday of school in order to try to get their 3 units in prior to completing a report card. And I don't think they're doing justice to setting up that routine within the math classroom or a customized math path, which comes a little bit further down in personalized learning, because the need to get into the curriculum quickly to try to time it in according with reporting periods.
Okay.
Now, I truly, Ryan, you could look in a year and say, so because they didn't start math, for blank days later, what was the benefit of student learning? Ideally, I would hope that we're really getting to know our students, self-reflecting and working on the learner profile. The ultimate academic gain, in talking with the districts that have done trimesters, their math and ELA scores did not skyrocket because of trimesters. And so it's not necessarily, I can't stand here and say the reason to do it is because it's going to improve academic gain. That's not proven.
Okay. And I guess I come back to, if we're doing personalized learning, that starts in kindergarten. So every year as the students are in this personalized learning model, they're going to be repeating similar steps under that construct. So I still fall back in favor of more contact with the parents and staying with the quarter system, in my personal opinion.
Sure.
Other board members?
I was just gonna say, I don't think it matters how you cut it up as long as we maintain contact, right? So, and I would say mandatory contact, not optional contact, because I think that's a different part of the language, right? So if you cut it up in trimesters or quarters or 5s or 6s or 20s, whatever, as long as you're doing mandatory contact in some of those pieces.
And I don't think it has to be a report card. I think the report card is cumbersome. I think taking out a report card, I could see why that could be a benefit, but if there is enough supports to make sure you're continuing the contact in other ways.
I think the trimester makes sense. I'm not, because to your points, I think it's the frequency of regular contact, the nature, and maybe this allows for the nature of that contact to evolve over time into something that may be more useful over time with standards-based learning and with the feedback that the teacher can give to the family and to the student. So I think, to your point of making that, if whether it's the parent-teacher conference becomes the fifth required thing, because it will be a different experience than it has been before, and it has a different value for that contact and communication. It seems to be like you're on the right track.
And I agree, the conference could be better without a report card in front of you.
I think it becomes like that idea between growth and fixed, right? So the report card's a very fixed idea, right? This is a grade that stays, where maybe the progress report or the conference becomes a very progress-based thing.
Yeah.
Sir, is there a state change that we fear? Do we even go there? That would change and kind of throw that wrench in there? Is there anything that they, because they're changing stuff all the time, right?
Yeah, I can't think of anything. Many districts have a dual calendar right now, and it's just one calendar with the both reporting dates reported.
You guys
and
consider that part?
There's just no state legislation that this.
Are you talking more
really
about the
matches
standards
to.
changing, or the tests
Yeah,
changing,
whatever
those
it may
kind of
be,
things?
whatever it may
Okay.
be, because they're changing it all the time, and we're talking about that keeping scores like every 2 years it changes, and then therefore the evaluation of scores are like we won't have it for 2 more years. So that's where I'm going with that.
Okay, no, that question makes sense, because you're right, since we've started here together, the state has changed so many different things, from ACT to SAT, from ISAT to the PARCC test. But for right now, even if this test changed, the quarters versus trimester, that part would stay the same. So that's something we can control. As far as the state changing anything, that would be out of our control. But the trimester or quarter wouldn't impact that.
And that's why I call it fear. The other question I have is, keeping it real, what kind of resistance are you finding out there?
In other districts?
No,
Oh.
internally.
We have not gone to the CAC. This was the first place we came for any feedback. After our Teacher Advisory Council, we had no resistance at Teacher Advisory Council. It was a 14-0 vote. We briefly mentioned it at a couple of our chats that we had with parents, and their questions were, would it lessen my amount of contact time? And we had described how the parent conference possibly could shift and feel a little bit different. And I like that analogy of the fixed versus growth. I think that would be perfect language to use, because it can be more of that conversation. And we really haven't had any other parent conversations. We did not take it to PTOs or PTNs yet, because this is our next step. To go to CAC Thursday, I think will be, the place where we need to capture that feedback and see what answers we have.
So far it's only been the inner circle of the 14.
For sure. Yep. In other districts, we kind of said, what was the parent reaction? A couple had said, I'm not sure they even realized much of a change. And the other said, we had a thorough PR plan. We started at open houses, and that's kind of what we built our PR plan off of. To start this spring to open houses, to talk about the change in the conference, to talk about the change in how often and frequent certain documents would come, progress report versus report card. And they said once they kind of did that PR, there wasn't much afterwards when it went into effect.
Okay, so at this time, you don't need anything from us. You're going to go talk to those other groups, and you'll be back to us sometime in January?
Correct. Yep, we're going to go to CAC and then go to the full ad team, and then we'll bring back a proposal if needed in January.
Okay, and in the meantime, if board members have questions, they can forward them
Please
to
do.
Dr. Layden and get those asked to me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to item J3, which is the approval of the timeline for auditor request for proposal.
Dr. Fuchs?
Sure. With the presentation and the approval of the 2016-17 audit, our 3-year contract with Sikich is over. And so I'm recommending that we begin the RFP process to select a new auditing firm. I've included a copy of my proposed calendar, the bid specifications or the proposal specifications, the interview questions, the evaluation, and the rubric. The difference between a regular bid and an RFP is that with a professional service, the board has the opportunity to use additional criteria besides the cost of the service. At the last time that we did this, 3 years ago, we had 2 board members serve on the interview team, as well as a couple FAC members, myself, and I don't think we had a superintendent at the time. So I think it was just the 5 or 6 of us.
I think it was just.
Yeah, it was just us.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'd like to distribute the RFP packets in December with qualifications due a month later in January. We would screen those qualifications. It'd take about a week, plan for finalists to be interviewed, and then have board interviews in February with a board approval at the end of February. That's a suggested timeline. If anything kind of gets delayed, we'd have to adjust it. But that should give us an appropriate amount of time to select a company that would then come in June to start with the preliminary audits in preparation for this fiscal year.
I forgot to look up the terminology, but there's 2 different types of audits, correct? We do the more comprehensive.
That's correct. And so I did modify this RFP. The last RFP that we had, I asked for both pricing, the AFR and the CAFR. On this one, I've only included the comprehensive one because the board seems to be pleased with it. We've got our 10 years worth of data. It's going well. And the board continues to support us for the recognition from ASBO for a comprehensive audit. So if you want to change that and go back to just the AFR, we can do that, and I can change this.
I don't know that I do. I just wanted to raise the question so we knew what we were asking.
Absolutely. So I assume because the board hadn't indicated that they were displeased with the CAFR, that we would continue with it.
Do you have a rough, I know it's a guess, but
Sure.
what the price difference is, it 10%
Yeah,
more?
I
for
believe
the-
it was a couple $1,000s difference.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be a savings if you went back. And then if you went back to the other one, we would not be eligible to apply for the award. We would just get the annual financial report and be done with it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, which either way works. Yeah.
How much interest did we have of companies the last time when we did this?
I think we had 10 or 11.
10 or 11?
Yeah, and then we interviewed about 4, was it 4 or 5 maybe?
I thought it was 2 or 3,
I
but.
thought it was 3.
3, okay. I'd have to look at how many.
Okay.
So-
And they're all local?
No,
No, they're not local.
they're in the state,
Okay.
but not too many local.
Like Springfield or something?
We have them from all over the state, yeah.
All right, thank you.
There's a select market that focuses on school districts.
Others, questions?
Well, it seems like a fairly aggressive timeline.
Yeah.
Does it need to, I mean, given the workloads, is this your preferred, or given that they don't need to come in until June, does this need to be wrapped up, or you're trying to get it out of the way before the next things hit?
Spring is really, really busy for us, starting in January because of all the other bidding. And so I wouldn't mind getting a jump start on this.
Okay.
Additionally, depending on the size of the firm that is selected, we want to make sure that we're on their calendar for June. And June's not the more important one. It's getting that August, September, because we just have such a hard time getting auditors to get us our stuff back by October 15th. I think since I've been here, we've never had an audit done by October 15th. We've always had to ask for the extension. And I know there are a couple auditing firms out there that regularly get their audits done for their clients. We've just not had that luxury. It's
And
very
that-
interesting.
I see you have that end of September draft date or whatever.
I
you would call
do.
it in here. And
I
that
do.
probably was in the last contract as well.
It was, absolutely.
So I was gonna say, is that one of the criteria?
Yeah, it is. And they always say they can.
But getting on their calendar, you're not gonna get it if you're not on their calendar.
Right, right. So that's one of
Okay.
the reasons I just want to make sure that we're on the calendars for those for the company that is selected.
Okay.
Other than that, my next, if I wanted to stretch it out a little bit, spring break, I'd want to have it wrapped up by, again, budgeting season, bidding season, purchasing. Spring is very, very busy in the business office. If there's a downtime, it's right now in between, and it's really, not too far.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything, and I didn't read it, is there anything in here that says if they don't get it to us by a certain time, that, they owe us?
I don't believe I put that in there. Let me double check. I don't believe so, though.
I think it just said it can only be mutually extended. It should be by agreement. So I don't know if it would, I don't know what their engagement letters are like. If you could write it, you have an out. I don't know that they're gonna pay you, but maybe you could terminate your contract if you wanted.
I mean, it kinda have us already in the contract, it's like, can't do it now, so it's.
Yeah.
Well, unless final payment is withheld upon timely completion of the,
Yeah, we do withhold the payment until it's done, and they don't submit invoices until it's done. There's several invoices along the way. We don't pay the final one until we have hard copy in hand.
It baffles me that they specialize in school districts and there are deadlines and they don't meet them on a regular basis.
I think it's primarily because an extension is always allowed.
When you're gonna check references, right?
Sure.
Is that something to ask?
It is.
Yeah.
It
I don't know
is.
if you do.
They provide.
Do they actually meet the deadlines they set? Yeah.
Right.
And I didn't know if you wanted to ask it in references, I don't know if this is an interview question, anything about the consistency of their engagement teams? I know you had challenges with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because I think 3 years ago, their answer would have been, this is our team. Very consistent. 3 years later, not one of them is still here.
Yeah, and that's where maybe references can give you an insight, but.
Exactly, of how long.
It's still a little bit of a luck of a draw. I
It
agree.
is. Ability to meet deadlines, thank you.
I don't see that in your questions.
Peter, are you concerned with the timeline?
no, I'm just concerned for you. If
Oh.
you're good with
He
this,
wants it faster.
It's all good.
I was just checking.
Thank you.
She's got this.
Any other board members have any interest in the less expensive option of the audit, or is that just me?
I feel like that'd be going backwards a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, that's my opinion.
What's the current charge right now? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there's
Charge?
CAFR versus the annual
AFR,
financial.
Oh, the one between the other, okay. It's only a couple thousand difference, right?
Yeah.
You said?
If it's just me, it's fine, let's move on.
Okay. So are we,
You know,
do you
I
need?
didn't have a recommendation on here because I wasn't sure if you were gonna change anything. So you can create a motion if you want.
Okay.
Because on the agenda, I do have approval of the timeline, so we can, or I can put it on the consent next time with, approve the timeline and then just reiterate it in a brief memo. It's up to you how you wanna handle it, but
You know, why don't you go ahead and put it on consent for next time? And that way, if anybody goes home and
Yeah.
says, oh my gosh, I should have asked this, I didn't think of
Still
it,
keeps
then
you on schedule?
we can get those things worked out before it shows up on the consent next time.
that'll work.
Is that okay with everyone? Just gives everybody a little more time in case they need it.
Because I set that RFP packet available December 15th, and our next board meeting is December 11th. So that's exactly plenty. I did that intentionally so that if there were changes, such as the AFR, that I could go back.
Okay.
And do that. So I'm pretty well ready with what we need. So.
Great.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item J4, which is the Triple I Conference recap.
Yes, annually, we have administrators and a number of board members attend the Triple I Conference in Chicago. And so a couple years ago, we started coming back to the board and sharing updates from some of the conferences we attended, some of the workshops we attended, kind of in a similar fashion that we expect from administrators and teachers in the districts. When they come back, they provide information of what was learned and maybe some impactful changes we might consider or that can make Kaneland better. So what I will share is Mr. Atkins couldn't be here tonight, so I've already assigned him to give me his information for the weekly update, so you'll be able to see what he gleaned at the Triple I this Friday in the weekly update. So I'll let President Witt and Mrs. Barber share theirs, and I'll share a couple things that I learned.
Do you want to? You go ahead. Okay, so Shauna and I attended pre-conference workshops, 2 of them, so I'll take one of them and she can do the other one. We did one on data and one on superintendent evaluation. So I'll tell you, in superintendent evaluation, I will say it was led by the IASB. Their classes are fine. They're not super dynamic, and they're not, they stick to a script. They were definitely they just stick to the same script. A lot, and it becomes a big commercial a lot of times for their paid. They want to say, oh, we'll come in and help you with your superintendent evaluation. We'll come in and we'll help you with your goal setting and things like that. And it all seems, sometimes it seems like that's what they're doing. So what I got out of the superintendent evaluation, a lot of people don't do it at all, but we are required by law to do it. It's in the Illinois School Code. I did ask, and I was told that they've gone away from the 360 evaluation, because that was one of the things we struggled with, was getting direct reports, and do we need to do that? They said the trend is away from that. And other than that, I felt good that it reaffirmed that we do it the right way, by, we set the goals and then we evaluate based on the goals that were set. We don't go all over the place. They did provide several examples of evaluation instruments, and for the most part they were all over the place because there's no real standard. There's not it wasn't, these are the ones for best practice. It was, these are some you can use, and there was one that fits kind of what we've done before, but is a little more structured, that I thought we could use. It basically lists the goals and the accomplishments, and then there was a section for evaluating more of the soft skills, so that we don't always get into that. So I thought that might be a good enhancement, and as we move into evaluation time, I'll send you guys those things and see what you think, and we can move forward with that. So that, at least I got that out of it. We had some good discussions with, other board members and other superintendents that were in the room.
I went to, as Teresa said, we went to those 2 seminars, and I also went to some breakout sessions on a legislative update, dashboard data, and online learning. Kind of the data one that we went to, plus this dashboard one that I went to, I found very interesting. I think the dashboard one, it was done by 5 labs that I think is somehow related to Forecast 5. Mm-hmm. And so it's they're putting together a data warehouse where a district could put all of their data together. And the district that was doing it was saying they want to spend 90% of their time analyzing data and only 10% of their time managing data now. And I must say it was very cool. So they had all the students' demographics, current grades, like every 6 weeks they'd update grades at every class the student ever took, the teacher, the grade they got, every activity they were in, their attendance history, and then whatever you wanted to put that stuff together, you could do it in a couple clicks and write a new little query. And then that query, if it was, some of what they were looking at was, what freshmen are failing a core class. You could just look at that, who's passing, who's failing, and then you could click on it and drill down, and you could say who's passing and failing in math, science, social studies, English, and then you could click further and say in math, which math teacher has the kids who are failing, that sort of thing. You could keep kind of drilling down, or you could do it by male, female, low income, and you can kind of see the trends that you were trying to find. They're trying to add some statistical analysis to that as they grow and get more districts involved in doing this, but it was interesting. The other side of that data is, I think, attaching it to the every student succeeds, and just, I think the themes we keep hearing are creating pathways for kids, and measuring kids by not one number, but a variety of factors. So they were talking about how they can use that data to see not just an ACT score, but you can add GPA plus an ATC score plus an academic indicator plus a career indicator, and you can have all of that data in one place, and then maybe encourage kids who have 3 of the 4 to get that 4th, you know, or it was interesting. So a lot of it on data analysis, and kind of how that's attached to kind of college and career ready, and creating a framework of what you define student success to look like, and maybe multiple definitions of student success, and then trying to monitor that information so then you can be accountable to that. So.
And I actually went to, I went to a competitor's program on the same thing. And basically it is the same thing. It's about pathways and layers of data in order to, you know, just report it out differently, things like that. So
it's interesting.
Yeah. So I also attended one of the more interesting ones I attended was called the top 10 legal mistakes that board members make and how to fix them. So that I wrote down real quickly the top 10 legal mistakes. One of them was the number one was closed session. That when you get into closed session, you meander around with topics, and you really can't do that. You know, you can only talk about the stated things you stated as you were going in. Conflicts of interest. They actually talked about board members not, and it wasn't about booster clubs and things like that, but not volunteering. They even said, like, board members volunteering to cut the grass, you could be, you know, get in trouble with labor contracts and prevailing wage and things like that. So that was kind of interesting that they talked about that. They talked about the Open Meetings Act as it relates to email, and one of the things I thought was funny was they said, there's a meme that goes around that says, dance like no one's watching, but email like you're gonna have to defend it in a deposition. So they suggested that. Public comments, basically that legally, you know, we do request that people make a special appointment to talk about students and teachers. However, if someone didn't and they were to name names, that we need to allow that. We can't stop anyone from doing that. And you can't, although we can set time constraints like we do, you can't cut people off because they're saying something you don't like, all that kind of stuff. So, and then student discipline, they talked about make sure that the hearing with the parents, you know, is one of the first steps, not like, okay, before we bring the parents in, we're gonna brief the board, and then they said, you know, have the parents there and the hearing first. One of the bigger ones they talked about was, we've always expelled for this. And the guy said, what that tells me about you is that you don't realize the law changed, you know, so the law has changed, even if we've expelled, you know, for certain things. We're not a big expelling school board, but if we were to do that, you know, you can no longer have any zero tolerance policies. It's against the law. So, and then the other one was religion and praying, and policy matters. Make sure when we're voting that we know our policy, and that the board is a legal entity rather than 7 individuals, and that we need to understand that we're acting as one legal entity rather than 7 individuals. So that was one of the more interesting ones I did. And then we both went from waiver to virtual learning, which Maureen Willemon was on. It's about Oswego School District adding in virtual learning and getting waivers from the state to do so, not just for remediation of credits.
Credit recovery type stuff.
Yeah, not just credit recovery. I wasn't too impressed with their numbers. It's a huge district, and the numbers that they got weren't weren't large. They've kind of gone up and down. So certainly would be a great service. I don't know about it being worth the cost. So those are the ones I went to.
Good, thank you. I attended the annual ISBE workshop, and as part of it, one of the things they talked about was that on the 21st, which was last Tuesday, all of the information from the respective districts had to be updated, and accurate, so they can begin to finalize the process on the evidence-based funding model. So it's one of those, here's the next really last deadline you have to have and follow. So all of that is in, and now they are going to continue to work on that and hopefully get the information out to us. And one of the other things they talked a lot about as far as reporting was a variance report by building for FY19. One of the things that traditionally you get a district report, a big picture. What they want and are going to require as part of the evidence-based funding model is more of a site-based reporting on per pupil expenditure and why is it different. Is it different at this building because you have more students with special needs? Is it different at this building because you have a larger enrollment? Is it different because of all of those factors? And that's something that they want to try to more clearly itemize out between buildings. I'm not sure who will oversee it and manage it on their end, but that's information that they're going to be looking for the end of the following school year.
So does that mean they're looking at setting up control charts and doing analysis of variability within, I mean, there's all kinds of tests you would do to look for those kinds of variations that have some rigor to them, and then there's just sort of the random, well, this one looks like an outlier. Do you have any sense of what level of rigor is being brought to that process that they describe?
I don't. I think part of this is based on the numbers of the evidence-based funding model, on what the sizes are supposed to be for this many students, what the size is, or how many teachers you have to have for grade level and per classes. So I think what they're trying to do is use this as an accurate monitoring tool that people are following the evidence-based funding model and using the data to try to as closely meet what is in it as far as did they just drop an element? I think 27 elements, the 27 elements to make sure that those are all being followed.
Is that going to be on the report card too, like disclosed to the public by building?
I think they're intending
So
it
I
to.
think some of it's the community to hold you responsible.
The accountability piece.
Yeah.
One of the other things is, as you'll recall, as we went through the whole budget process and the state budget process, I would forward emails out from the Alliance, which are the III groups, but one of the other ones where we get a great deal of information from is LUDA, the Large Unit District Association. And one of the things we did do there, we did meet our new executive director, because Bert and Diane, as they're affectionately named, they are both retiring together. They came in together about 11 years ago, and they're both retiring together. So the new executive director is going to be John Berkey, who's currently the superintendent in Huntley School District. So he'll be transitioning later February, March from his superintendent role in Huntley to the executive director for LUDA. So that will be probably a big learning curve from running a school district to driving down to Springfield all the time, representing our concerns down at Springfield. We heard a speaker who was very motivational, but he said, I'm not a motivational speaker. If you need motivation, you're in the wrong place, in the wrong career. He basically shared a response. How is your response? What is your response? What happens when an event takes place? What is your response? And then what is the outcome? So it's E equals R over O. So a lot of things, the event, you can't control. You can't control what comes into your classroom with students. You can't control what happens with parents. You can't control a lot of things, but it's your response. What is your attitude like? Who are the people you're hiring? How are you training them? How are you working with them? A lot of it, I'm not sure if I mentioned our keynote speaker, but George Kouros was our keynote speaker last Monday, and that's a lot of the same thing. Jim Collins, a lot of those topics in Good to Great that they talk about. You can't move an organization forward by trying to move the entire organization at the same time. It's more about what can you do incrementally with each staff member, and how can you teach them to have proper responses and yourself have proper responses. So it was, even though he didn't intend it to be motivational, it was very motivational. Works with lots of lots of teams, lots of corporations. It's called the Focus 3 is the company, and you did a real nice job of getting people to consider why they're doing what they're doing, what their responses are. Then the last part was a panel discussion of District 90, which is O'Fallon down in south in the state. And they talked a lot about collective bargaining, some of the things that are going on and changing in collective bargaining, some of the things that you're seeing in different contracts. And then the other part was the community relations piece, which was really intriguing, especially based on Kaneland 2020 and what are we doing to get our community involved and develop those relationships. So those are things that the collecting bargaining piece as we start. I'll share a lot of that with the team as we move forward, and then the community relations piece internally and also with the board as the times are appropriate. So those were the workshops I attended.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for supporting our attendance. I know Dr. Fuchs couldn't go this year, and she was greatly bummed and checking in regularly on how it was going. So we appreciate your support and learn a lot from it. It's a valuable experience, so thank you for allowing us to go.
It was great, and I think we might have to have some discussions about whether or not, with all the cuts, that it's appropriate for board members to go next year. I think, you know, I don't know that I would feel right going, so that will have to be a discussion for another day.
Good, thank you.
Yep, thanks. Okay, that concludes new business. We'll move on now to item K, which is the superintendent and board report.
Yeah, first thing, Thursday night, we have CAC upcoming, and I think Sean is scheduled to attend that one. As Dr. Mull mentioned a few times, one of the topics is going to be the core change to trimester, or the conversation about that. And another piece is actually great timing. Unsolicited CAC members at the first meeting talked about some of the things they want to hear about and get feedback on, and one of it was critical thinking and decision making. And this year, as part of our exploratories at the elementary level, we started the critical thinking exploratory rotation class. So Laura Garland, Dr. Mom can't be there, but Laura Garland will be there representing both of those topics, as well as every year, CAC always likes to hear about communication, what's new, what's different, and I think video streaming tonight obviously is a big one. That's one that they had feedback on and felt was important. And then we'll also talk about other means of communication, the number of principal blogs that they're working on now and what they're doing different. And then also, they always like to ask about Meredith, what's going on with Meredith campus, how often is it being used, what's it being used for. So Dr. Fuchs will be there and share that update also. That was one of them. Another one that I had, it's going to be a little more of a lengthy conversation. It's the Heartland Recycling Program or project that's proposed just across the way here. And just as a quick reminder, I want to kind of share the board what's led to this point and the steps that we have taken to get here. First of all, we received a public hearing notice in the district. It's required by law if you're within a certain distance or a certain perimeter of any new facility that's going up. So what we wanted to do was, once we had that meeting, to be proactive, we wanted to contact both the Village of Sugar Grove and also the vendor Heartland Recycling and talk to them, find out as we have anything that new comes into our district that might impact our district or students or staff, funding, safety, those types of things. We met with them here. First thing we did, 5 administrators met with 2 representatives from Heartland Recycling and also, I think he's what's Walter's exact title?
Economic Development Coordinator.
Economic Development Coordinator from Sugar Grove, and just kind of troubleshoot, problem solve, what it might look like, what is a recycling center, what is a CCDD, and how might it impact Kaneland School District. So we were able to have that conversation with them. And based on a number of our questions, Mark Payton and I, a couple days later, followed up and took a tour out to their facility in Aurora that's just south of Route 88 by Route 25 on the east side of Aurora, to kind of see what it looked like, kind of try to visualize what it might look like if something similar to that came to our school district over by 47 and Harder Road. So as a result, based on those 2 things, then I attended a public hearing, the Sugar Grove public hearing 2 weeks ago, and that public hearing consisted of the Planning Commission met, to hear from Heartland Recycling. So they pretty much, or they shared almost verbatim the same 20-minute presentation that they shared with our district administrative team. And then as a result, after they finished, there were a few questions for them, but the primary portion of the meeting, about the last 2 hours, was public concerns, citizens sharing all of their concerns about a facility like that coming to Sugar Grove. So as they shared those, the Planning Commission listened. Planning Commission took the information in and is not going to act yet. Their next Planning Commission meeting is Wednesday night. They're going to continue the conversation. They had a few points of interest, a series of PowerPoint pictures that one of the citizens shared. They wanted to make sure that that was in the record, and a couple other things that they weren't able to get in the record, that those were all in the record. And so one of the things that I'll share with you candidly was that at the citizen portion of when they shared any of their concerns, one of the things that they cited was the fact that we had the meeting here at Harder with the Heartland representatives, and they've publicly stated it that they believe it was a secret meeting. It was not a secret meeting. We knew that there would be potential impact to our district anytime a new company, a new vendor, anything that happens. So we wanted to meet to be proactive to find out how that might impact our district. And they also shared at that public hearing too that there might be the belief that there was some financial remuneration from the district by meeting with them, which obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, which very candidly, that's not true. There was no enticements, there was nothing offered, accepted, or any conversation like that. And so then at the end of the public hearing, I didn't speak at the public hearing because I wanted to wait, do my fact finding at the public hearing, bring it back to our board, let the board have some conversation, see if the board has any other input that they have. But what I did do was, they had two gentlemen, one that referenced that the district or administrators might be getting some money, some financial remuneration on this. Met with him afterwards, shared that the reason we met was to be proactive, not to try to support Heartland or not to try to have any financial gain from meeting with them. So, and then the other gentleman I met with to tell him the same thing. So, didn't speak at the public comment portion, but did want to share with both of them that the reasons why we met and what our intentions were of meeting and doing the tour out at Heartland. So that's kind of tried to sum it up and tried to sum up some of their findings. There were a number of concerns on flooding, a number of concerns on traffic, muddy roads, the traffic, the muddy roads, the noise, the muddy roads, noise, air quality. There were a number of things that they shared during that 2-hour period of time, and I believe there might even be more. That's why the public hearing is continuing. So I wanted to bring that back to our board for informational purposes, and like I mentioned, the public hearing, or the next public hearing of the Planning Commission is Wednesday night at 7 o'clock in Sugar Grove. So I wanted to see if you had any additional questions, any additional thoughts. Dr. Fuchs, before I let them have any thoughts, anything that I missed, anything as part of those meetings that you were also in that you wanted to share?
No, but I did receive an email earlier today, I haven't had a chance to mention it, from the village requesting information on how many buses we have in that area and which way they're headed. So I'll be providing that to the village. So I'm glad that they're asking those questions as well.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll start. So I've received a lot of comments from the community at large, as well as from Waubonsie Community College, which also shares a concern because it's across the street. And the concerns are, like Dr. Layden said, about air quality and noise. So as I was looking through the operations plan, a couple things really stuck out to me. They said that that the director will decide whether or not there's excessive dust. I'd like to know how we determine that. How does one say it's excessive or not? And what does that do to our air quality? Another thing was that there will be no noise impact, but noise will take place during 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. And I thought to myself, well, that's convenient right during a school day. So I would like to know how the board feels, how the district feels, because there seems to be a lot of concern maybe about environmental impact, health impact, the education setting. I know we've talked about this before, but I think maybe as this is moving forward, we might need to make some more decisions about how we react to this. Another thing I've heard is that we are complicit with it, that the school board has endorsed this, which is obviously not true. So I thought we would address that as well.
My hesitation is, do we need to actually make that an agenda item to have this discussion, or can we have this discussion?
We can, as I talked with Maureen about it, we can have this discussion now. We just can't take any formal action on it. So as part of a board report or a board update, we can have conversation. We just can't take any action tonight.
Okay.
So how far along are they in the process? And when are they thinking, by this time we should have potential approval by whoever that may be?
What Heartland had mentioned was a timeline that would go into the spring and potential opening for next summer. And it's a 7 to 9 year operation till generally all of the sand in this current spot would be mined and sold and moved out, and all of the fill brought in and brought that to what they believe is up to grade and valuable commercial value. And then the other part of that I was going to share, the Planning Commission, it is with the Planning Commission now, and the Planning Commission has more discussion, that at some point they either make the recommendation to move it forward to the full trustees, full village trustee, the full board, and that's something I'm not sure what that timeline is going to be. I just know that they're meeting again Wednesday night. I don't know if it'll be concluded and if they'll make a decision, or if at that point they'll decide not to move it forward.
So that's in the Sugar Grove is making the final decision?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to vote on it.
Okay.
It's not our thing.
But
No,
can we?
No, I was going to say, the concerns that were expressed by the public at the meeting are essentially the same concerns we as a board have expressed when you brought this to us originally. The reference to the director has the discretion to determine, again, similar, last time we talked about this, it was, that's nice, what assurances do we have? I don't know that we have any leverage relative to this issue, but it would be nice to know if there's, if there could be stronger assurances around what the monitoring is, what the discussion about dust and wetting things down when how many particulate what the particulate level needs to be, all those kinds of things. I think there's a number of folks who would probably feel more comfortable if there were more no pun intended, concrete answers to those kinds of concerns, but it's not our decision to make. But.
Do they have any idea of how many trucks are in and out of that area?
Yeah, that was in there.
Yeah, they estimated 40 to 60 a day.
40, 60 a day.
Mm-hmm. And I think based on the timeline of when they would come out, one of our biggest concerns was the traffic at Harder and Route 47. Our bus drivers, there was already a great deal of backup there and a great deal of time trying to make that left-hand turn onto Route 47. And if there were additional trucks out there during certain times, that would even make that more problematic for bus routes and bus times. That was something that, as we met with Heartland and the Village of Sugar Grove, we cited that as a concern.
It's both at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, twice a day.
Right.
So the only entrance is gonna be off of Harder, there's no entrance in or out on 47, correct?
That's what's planned right now, correct?
One of the things that was brought up when we met with the municipal leaders, because it makes you wonder, well, why are they pursuing? I mean, I know they got the request from Heartland,
right.
And one of the things they mentioned was safety, because of the fact that there, it's a quarry and there's, strip pits or whatever back there. They thought looking way out, because this property around here might eventually house another high school, they wouldn't want that to be a draw for students. So that was one of the things that was brought up. And of course they want, I think it would benefit everyone to have it eventually be developable land. You know, that's the goal, is that they would fill in after the recycling of the concrete, then they fill in and it becomes a commercial property that can be developed. So that was what they expressed their goal to be.
Show them we have a mountain they can have.
We did actually have that conversation. One of the things that we shared was, as they were looking for fill, that we had a huge mountain that we'd be willing to donate to help them fill. So, kind of a joke.
But we do have one.
Correct.
The cost of getting rid of it is in the transportation, and they don't provide transportation.
Really?
So,
If we provided transportation, we probably have a lot of takers.
right.
Right.
So if we can't take as I understand, we can't take a stance as a board, right? Or can
We could.
Okay, so I guess that's my question. Well,
It has no legal standing, but
Well,
we
could.
certainly have the right to.
So I
do
guess
that.
my question would be to the board then would be, is this something we want to maybe vocalize that, and I don't know, what is our feeling as a collective? I know individually I have great concern with this, for those reasons cited, right? Especially environmental and health impact, but also because the community has mentioned this. The community has said that, I'm not sure if this is a great idea. Why are we doing this, right? And so even if we have no legal standing that's stopping it, we have a symbolic message.
Doing that.
What's that?
I have no interest in doing that.
Okay.
Of them doing that?
Of us making any kind of public statement, because it's meaningless.
Yeah. I figure from the Sugar Grove side of the house, there are those people that are experts in that area and they're dealing with it. And I say experts because obviously there's people that deal with some of these aspects of it. They have their research people in the background, I guess, that I would.
I'm skeptical of that research, especially because there doesn't seem to be a lot of longitudinal studies on this, right? So what are the long-term effects of having one of these things in your backyard? And I would argue that we don't know, or if we do know, it's not on the up and up.
Well, and I would say that goes for both sides. You know, they're citing, people are citing health reports and things like that, and I don't know the validity of those reports from the con side or the pro side. I don't know that there's solid evidence on either side. The one thing that, I thought about was that in your meeting, they're in operation from May to October only. Was that the time frame?
Right.
So the bulk of the time is when students aren't in session. So some of the issues are mitigated a bit by that. That's just the only other consideration I would bring up.
Todd, the facility that you visited, that's not a residential area, right?
I think they cited in our meeting that just it was either east or west, I don't remember which, there was a subdivision about 1,000 feet from it. Whereas during the meeting, the Sugar Grove residents cited that the crushing machine, if it goes there, would be probably 200 feet from some of their property lines. So it'd be much closer. So that it has 88 on one side, it has Route 25 on the other, and then there's a berm and some vacant land on one side, then there's the housing in Aurora. So I think they cited 1,000 feet away. So it's much further than what ours would be to any of the residents, either on Harder Road or Old Oak.
And what's the finishing timeline when they expect it? Wasn't it like 9?
8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years.
Report says, yeah.
And who regulates these people? Do you know?
The IEPA and the EPA.
State.
And the state, and the county. Yep.
County.
And the EPA.
I have a personal feeling that to strap those residents of Sugar Grove with perhaps unsellable property, my personal feeling is that that's not a great thing for the village to do, but I don't know if as a board that's something that we would get into. I think the impact on the school, we should keep it to that, although.
I think that's our purview, but.
It's a little, yes,
Well,
it's hard for me sometimes
Right.
to cut that off, those feelings off about the fact that, you know, there are some people that whose property will be directly impacted.
But I also think there's gonna be an impact to students.
Mhm.
I don't think we can ignore that. And so as a school board, that would be where we are,
Mhm.
right?
I don't.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
Explain to me specifically what the effect on the students is going to be and how we can control it.
Well, I don't know if we can control, but we can certainly, we could say something as a maybe. And maybe
What is the effect going to be on the students?
Oh, the effect, I would think, based on what I've read here, is that they do not have a specific controls over their dust population. So that their particulate, they say, is excessive when they determine that. And they will determine when they use the water to mitigate that. Who's monitoring that? What's the guidelines? They're not outlining that in the report. And then you can argue that the noise, they specifically say the noise is minimal, and if it does take place, it will happen between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m.
But
As if that would be
the wind's blowing
fine.
from the south and heading to the north, there's no dust issues for the school to be worried about.
Are we certain of that?
No,
Because
I mean, that's why I'm saying this is none of our business.
They literally have a thing in here about if it's 20 miles per hour, they have to do something. If it's 30 miles per hour, they have to do something else. If there's heavy rains, they have to do something completely different. And to me, that says there's a lot of ifs here that we don't have a good handle on.
But we don't have any control.
But why not?
Because legally we don't.
So is these concerns something that the next meeting Todd can voice for us? I mean, as a district, or get more detail about? I don't know.
So if we were going to make a statement as a board, if we could agree on one, I plan to go to that meeting. I think it would be more appropriate if it's coming from the board that it's delivered by me instead of Dr. Layden. I'd like to keep him out of some of the political crossfire, I guess, you know. I'm just saying, if it's a board action, that I could voice that on behalf of the board. If we want to do that, and we can come up with something that we would.
Well, I guess, I mean, I have lots of questions, but I can always have questions about stuff. And so, you know, it's one thing to say, under whatever model that's used to predict what's the frequency of where the wind directions are and humidity levels and all these variables. I mean, I know it's a very complex process. At the end of the day, if we have a certain if we have students who have asthma, are they at greater risk? If the dust in the air is going to impact our HVAC system and increase our maintenance costs, I'd have a concern about that. I don't think we're going to get answers to any of those kinds of questions. So therefore, to Ryan's point, I don't know that I believe that we need to take a position as a board on this, because until you answer the questions, I don't know whether I oppose it or not. You know, I'm not thrilled, but they're questions that have to do with technology and cost and potential impact. So unless somebody's going to do some very heavy-duty analysis, and you're bringing in epidemiologists and you're bringing in all kinds of people who are going to do all these very complex calculations, I don't know how, you know, I have exactly the same concerns you have, but I don't have the information upon which I could feel like, I think as a board, I would want us to take a pro-work-on position on that. Now, I could go as an individual community member and express all my concerns on Wednesday night. Well, if 3 of us show up, are we violating open meetings?
Because I wasn't planning on attending.
Okay.
But as me, not as the board.
Right.
Well, if you two are going, I'll stay home.
When we go to things, you know, you know, I would speak on behalf of the board if there was anything to say. Otherwise, we speak on behalf of only ourselves. We don't sit together, and we don't discuss it before or after the meeting. And that way, we're not violating any Open Meetings Act requirements. So yes, everyone from Sugar Grove could attend, and we wouldn't, as long as we follow those guidelines, we're okay.
Yeah, I don't know if we have to have a board thing. There was a question, community members asked me what's the board's stance, they heard that we had already made a stance, which was an error, I said to them. That's
just so
Do you
weird
know
to
what
me.
the origin of that assumption is? Because I've heard that as well, and I'm wondering
I don't know.
why
I
that
got it
is.
from both my neighbors and WCC.
See, and I wondered if it was just because this group was vocal in saying we met with them.
Right.
And just the fact that we met with them suggested we were
In support of it.
Right.
when actually it was just fact-finding.
Well, it seems like people were skeptical of the meeting in the first place, and there's all this slander kind of tossed around already about it.
To be penalized for due diligence seems like
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot in that email that was factual.
No.
Aaron,
Yeah.
the material you have there,
Yeah.
is that accessible for?
Yeah, it was. I found it on Sugar Grove. I went to there and I looked up the. I don't remember exactly where I was clicking around, but I eventually got to the Parkland Recycling Sugar Grove proposal.
So
Right?
people can go look
was it on
for
the planning commission?
It might have
Yeah,
been.
if you go to Public Hearings, Planning Commission, and if you click on this topic, there are about 9 different supporting documents from
Right.
just the plat of survey all the way through other studies.
Right. There's a zoning thing. I read their proposal, which personally I found lacking information. But as Peter said, I'm not an expert. As Ryan, you point out, I don't know the information. I know that community members was concerned. I don't like the idea personally, so I thought, well, heck, I'll bring it up here,
Yeah, no.
have a voice here, and then if you guys don't like it, I'll do it on my own. Right? As
Peter,
me.
Peter brings very excellent points, if it comes to the point of affecting us as far as our ACs and the dust and stuff. I mean, you can go beyond, is our track gonna be covered by dust during a track, before a track meeting? It's gonna cost us to clean it up. You know, the list can go on and on,
Yeah.
but without answers, we can't go. How do we fight that? Or bring up those issues?
So I would also be of that mindset, so I think that kind of makes 4 of us, that, we're kind of saying without more information, I don't know that we want to make a statement as a board. I think I'm hearing Pedro, Ryan, and Peter, and if I join them.
Are we seeking more information, or are we going to let it die? That's my final question, I guess.
I think there's plenty of people already looking into the issue, in my opinion.
Where would,
But I'd hate
I
to
guess,
do
I
an
guess I wish
assumption.
we could find the, without hours of heavy research, individual research that, we don't need to be doing, really. I mean, I think both sides are gonna put out what they think supports their side. I wish that we could find the information, but I don't see how we could. Does anybody else?
Is
As
the
an
county
individual, I
involved
think
at
if you
all?
make a comment saying you hope Sugar Grove understands the impact of dust and noise, I think that's as far as you can go. I think it's then they can.
And that was some of the information that the citizens, in their 2 hours as they shared their concerns, they brought up more scientific studies. So that was more of the information that they were charged with bringing forward. They had an attorney who spoke on their behalf a couple of times with some of the concerns about the process. And you're right, we're not experts on any of this. So as I was there at the recycling center itself, I was trying to take that, put it next to Harder, and try to determine would there be an impact in the classroom? How loud would it be? Decibel levels, those kind of things. Not an expert in those areas. There was no way for Mark or I to tell what the impact of dust would be. They talked about muddy roads, dust particles, a number of those concerns that they had. But the one that we could probably truly quantify would be the bus traffic for sure. That we know that there would be, as trucks were coming out, if they were there at the same time that our buses were there, we know there would be potentially delays and potentially maybe risk-taking by bus drivers or other people taking a left-hand turn. I can't speak for their mindset, but people wait for a while. Sometimes they get excited and want to move.
Right.
So Sugar Grove want to assign 2 police officers, one right at the Harder driveway and one at 47 to manage traffic at.
Absolutely.
Well, they are asking for our information, so we know they've heard our concern, or at least are doing some more research on it.
I mean, just the traffic itself. I mean, you talk about buses, but you talk a lot of students that go through here too. I mean,
Well, it's not
Oh, yeah, Harder Road
I'd
is
hate,
is
I'd
the
hate
cut
an
through
accident
to the high school from Sugar
to
Grove.
say, oh, you know, yeah, that's true, it's too much type of thing happen. But I'd hate to go to that level. I mean, kind of like we're facing the potential that we're trying to get a light down at Kesslinger and Dalverman, but I mean, accidents do happen, but still they say, well, we do nothing about it. Because
Why do they
we
only
have- we
work
don't have
from,
enough
what'd you say,
traffic,
May to October?
That's the major construction season. During the construction
do
seasons when
anything.
people would be bringing the fill.
Everything freezes. Shut down for the fall.
But the asphalt's shut down.
I know you mentioned that they wanted to bring forward studies, health studies and things like that, but that group with the attorney that's working is the same group that said that our meeting was illegal and secretive, and that they thought there might be incentives having been given to the school district. So I don't know how well I would trust their research when, at least their research into what the school district has been doing, and we brought it forth at our last meeting, so they, you know, in open session. So we've been transparent about, you know, everything that the district has done.
Those of you guys that attend meetings, thank you for being bright.
Yes.
You're welcome.
So at this point, we could, and then we can go as individuals and.
Which is fine. Yeah, like I said, I thought I brought it up, bring it up here just because
No, it's appropriate.
of voice
Sure.
for the people.
See, that's
But,
fine.
like I said, I'm happy to voice this individually because these are individual concerns.
Two more things, much quicker. Next week, we have our Hall of Fame meeting, and I know Gail represents the board at the Hall of Fame, so
What night is that?
it's 12/6, so next Tuesday or Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, it's,
Who's got a calendar?
and that one's at 6 o'clock. Well, an agenda will be going out next Monday as a reminder.
I probably won't be at that one though.
Okay.
Unless somebody else wants to, but I won't probably.
I can look at the agenda and then we can touch base, and then I know there is always a
Because I think there's a
backup person.
question of whether it was actually on Wednesday night or was it on Tuesday night, which is the 5th, at 6 o'clock, because we wanted to start it earlier. I think there was some confusion.
It does have the earlier start for 6, but I'll verify and I'll send something to you.
Okay.
So I don't, Hall of Fame, I don't think is one we have a backup for, because
Because
You
Gail's
wanted
a standing
one.
person.
Gail's a
Okay.
standing person, so, I mean, if the committee can, I don't know how easy it would be for someone else to step into that role, especially if those, you know, nominations
right.
and things are ongoing discussions. Perhaps it's best just
Yep.
let us know.
That's a better idea.
when you-
Yep,
Okay.
I will. And then the last thing I just wanted to share is, as Jill Maris talked about, Julia Pratt and her loss and how important of a person that she's been and the impact she's had in our district. Also want to share that to the board, that a former board member, Elmer Gramley, passed away last night. Just got the information late last night and wanted to share that with you as a board. He was a former board member, FPC member for a number of years, and I did work with him for 1 year on the FPC, and what I did hear and what people shared about Elmer was that he was a better person than he was board member and FPC member, and so it was just a great man and a great loss for the entire Kaneland community. So just wanted to share that with you, and on behalf of the board, share our condolences to his family and friends.
There was no greater student advocate than
No,
him.
there wasn't.
Had a big heart.
So that was all I had. I don't know if
Okay.
Dr. Fuchs, you-
I have two things. We have FAC December 7th, which is the Thursday night. Who is our representative?
I'm number 1 on the list.
All right, Peter, thank you. And then, secondly, we received a
think you're my
check from the
backup.
Village of Sugar Grove for a little over $2,900 for land, cash, and impact fees, and it was split equally for those two accounts. So that'll help with our payment for the debt certificates.
Great. Good. Okay. Anyone else, board members?
We get Heartland to give us money?
No. So, anything else from board members? Okay, topics for future agendas? Anybody, anything? Okay, this is the second opportunity for public comment, and the same, for request for rules applies, and the floor is now open. Are there public comments? Okay, hearing none, I will close the floor to public comment. And we do not have an executive session tonight, which means that once we adjourn, that the meeting will end here, as will the live stream. So we're looking for a motion to adjourn at 9:39.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.